simple and clean.
That's the way that you're making me feel tonight.
That's it.
Yeah,
Copyright
this is
claim.
the original 17 lands banger.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Jank Diver Gaming YouTube channel. My name is Timothy Zaccanino, aka Jank Diver Tim. I'm here with Teld and Danelius to wrap up our monocolored 3-drops tier listing for arena playable cube cards in the Peasant sphere, and we're going to jump right in like we've been doing with the first 3 cards on this list, which are going to be the cards that are heavily played but are not available to us on Arena. So shout out to our paper players out there. So let's go ahead and discuss those 3, and then we'll circle back around to why we're doing black last and a little bit of housekeeping. So kicking off here with Yahenni Undying Partisan, which is technically on Arena but only exists at Uncommon outside of Arena. This is the 2 and a black 2/2 haste. When an opponent's creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can sacrifice one of your own creatures to give it indestructible. So free sack outlet in a space that doesn't have a lot of free sack outlets right now, which we'll see a couple more of those. We got Nantuko Husk lurking down there and a couple others that aren't quite as good as if Yahenni was on Arena craftable at Uncommon. Would you two feel compelled to play it?
It's close because 3 and a 2/2 is a really hard sell, but I've played this card enough in Commander to know that it gets big pretty quickly. Like, you kill one thing and it becomes a 3/3. We're getting close to playable. So I think if you can play this and not be too far behind, then it is quite strong. The problem is, I think in a lot of modern cube designs, you're just going to get run over if you try to do this, would be my guess.
Yeah, let us know if you're playing with this card and it's really performing well, but I'm so down on the sacrifice stuff at the moment, so it's hard for me to get excited about the card. It's clearly got some potential that I'm happy to give it a C, but yeah, I haven't played with this card in a Peasant context at all, so have no idea. I'm just not that excited about sacrifice stuff at the moment.
Yeah, a couple of things that do strike me as good about it. I see it more as just like a big, growy, scaly creature. I do like that it is good against Eldrazi spawn. So, like, your opponent's trying to use Eldrazi spawn for all their nonsense. Those cards are broken. And so a card that does scale, like, efficiently into those cards is nice, but that's pretty niche again. That's a pretty minor thing.
And good with Eldrazi spawn to, make it indestructible as well. So. Yeah. Okay, that'll be our benchmark for, the sack outlets coming up, of which there will be plenty. Hypnotic Spectre, and again, this is in order of how frequently they're played across, Peasant cubes. A ton of different Peasant cubes. Hypnotic Spectre being the second most played behind Yahenni. This is the 1 black 2/2 flyer. When it deals damage to an opponent, they discard a card at random. Alpha uncommon here.
My question to the people who play this is, why do you hate good games of Magic?
Well, it's on both ends. It's on both ends.
I can't imagine a world where this card isn't miserable on both sides.
You're not going to be able to cast it because it's black, and then you can cast it, but it's small, and so it just dies, or they can't kill it, and then it just starts destroying their hand. It's like
eating the lands out of their hand at random.
Yeah. Kind of powerful, but also very, very small and hard to cast. Like, honestly, I'd be okay giving it a D.
I'm fine with this too. I think if you want this effect, it's a much weaker card, but I do think Liliana's Spectre is just gonna probably perform. I think that's the name of the card. It's got an ETB that discards a card, and like, that card's not good, but at least it doesn't create the sort of heinous gameplay patterns that this card does.
And also, quick note: we threw on Boggart Trawler already because we've talked about this card in the past. And then for these first 3 cards, yes, they are ordered in how frequently they're played, but there are other cards on this list that are available on Arena that will be played more than Spectre and Bone Treader.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple C's there. I think I agree. I would just put Hypnotic Spectre in D. It's a 0 synergy card too. Yeah. Like, as far as like interactions with other things. That brings us to Bone Shredder. 2 and a black. 1/1 Phyrexian Minion. It's a flyer. It has Echo for 2 and a black. So at the beginning of your upkeep, if it came into play previous turn, you have to pay its Echo cost or sacrifice it. Normally, you just sacrifice it. It's fine. When Bone Shredder enters the battlefield, you destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. So 3 mana 1/1 flyer that pops something on ETB sometimes. Doesn't even have a target. Must destroy something. So this is one of those Flame Tongue Kavu things where you can't even run it out in some cases. And then you could keep it around as a flyer, but normally you just let it go to the graveyard for reanimation and stuff like that. So we will talk about a decent number of these kind of Chupacabra-esque creatures, which Peasant Cube continues to trend away from Mold Drifters towards Chupacabras, which is a lot of the best designs these days. But I don't think Bone Shredder is all that compelling. There was a time where this was in Vintage Cube, right? If I remember correctly, this was like a Vintage Cube card. But they've printed so many better ETB destroy creature cards that basically, I mean, this body doesn't really matter other than reanimation purposes, and most of the reanimation that can target this can target the other better cards. So I think this is probably fine. If it's destroying something on ETB, that's probably okay for a 3-mana creature that you can then chump with or sacrifice or reanimate, but it's not compelling by any means compared to, some of the better cards we'll talk about.
Not a card we have access to, but I feel like if we're interested in this, the main reason is it's a card that puts itself in the graveyard that also kills something. And if you're playing in paper and you're interested in that, Shriekmaw strikes me as a card that's probably going to do what this card does better like 90% of the time.
Yep, agreed with all that. C or D, but it's hard to rate it too lowly because it's a creature that kills things, and you can do fun things with that.
Yeah, C feels fine for that. So sorry to the paper gamers out there. We don't like your cards, I guess. I don't. If Bone Shredder was on Arena today,
I wouldn't.
I think I would consider it on account of like some of the black threes we run right now. Or
that's true.
I would have, except for the emergence of the brokenness of one of the cards we're going to talk about here in a minute. That's just like immediately become the best card in the color, I think.
I don't know about that. It's very good. Very good.
We'll see. We'll talk about it. Really drumming it up there. So stick around if you want to see what card Teld is talking about. There's a CTA for you. Okay, so real quick, why are we closing this series out with black threes? We've mentioned it in some other videos. Well, we've already recorded this actually pre-Strixhaven. And then, there was some wonkiness with the recording. I don't remember exactly what the issue was, but we ended up not being able to use it. So we are now re-recording, and we wanted to distance ourselves a little bit. In fact, I don't even remember what we said about some of these cards. So kind of a little bit of a fresh slate on this. And this will wrap up the monocolored 3-drops. You can check out that whole playlist off on the side wherever you're listening to this. So if you like this one specifically, or if this is your first tier list that you're watching with us, feel free to subscribe to the channel and watch the rest of the playlist. We've also got the guild tier list still going. Plus, we will be kicking off probably another series in conjunction with that to follow up the 3-drops here, whether that's 1-drops or something else. If you have a really strong preference, feel free to comment below and let us know what kind of tier lists you want to see. But the tier lists will continue until Peasant Cubes improve. The timing on this video should be such that we should still mention CubeCon.
Sure.
Jank Diver Gaming is in the sudden death. Or I think we're in the sudden death. I haven't checked to make sure we actually got... Yeah. Okay. We're in the sudden death. So we didn't win our vote. I think we were third in our block, but that puts us in a sudden death, which means once all the voting is done, which will be right around the time that this video goes live, there will be another chance for us to compete with some of the other runner-ups and still get the Jank Diver Gaming cube in. And by then, we'll also know if Danelius's cube has been voted in or is also in sudden death. So check that out as well. And you do have to make an account to vote, but we would really appreciate all the support we can. We're all looking forward to having an excuse to go to CubeCon, and being this close already for Jank Diver Gaming Cube is exciting. So I think we have the potential to rally people and win the runoff vote. So if you're watching this and you go to cubecon.com, I'll post it down in the description, and you see Jank Diver Gaming .org, sorry, or Danelius's Peasant All-Star Cube. Please vote for those, and we'll be happy to see people at CubeCon if we end up going. And then any other housekeeping we have to cover here? I guess Hagan, right? We should shout out Jay. What is it, Jay?
haganbmj.
haganbmj for creating the tool that Danelius is using to compile this list and ordering them in order of how often they are played.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us an appropriate measure of how much shame you should have for putting certain cards in your queue.
No, we're being positive.
Exactly.
Remember, we're being positive.
I'm positive some of these black cards suck. To steal a line from Tim in the last episode.
Well, okay, so I am making a conscious effort to be positive, but of course these are ranked in order of playability, so the positivity might like decline slightly as we continue. I think when we originally recorded this, we did it. We clustered it by like effect, but now it's in order of like how often they're played. But,
That's correct. Yeah.
All right, well, let's jump back into the list here with the most played card on Arena Cubes, which this one's actually appropriate. Sometimes we have a little bit of discrepancy with like what the most played card is or something, but here it actually feels appropriate. It's Morbid Opportunist. Morbid Opportunist, 2 and a black, 1/3, human rogue. Whenever one or more other creatures die, draw a card. The ability triggers only once each turn.
Yeah, still very impressed by this card, honestly. Like every time it hits the battlefield, I feel like it has to die. It does kind of need to go in particular decks that can trigger it fairly often. It's obviously really great with Eldrazi Spawn. It's really nice with Emrakul's Messenger and the like. And there's definitely board states where it will not be impressive. It will eat a removal spell a huge percentage of the time, but I just still see it draw lots of cards and then eat a removal spell, or draw a card and eat a removal spell. So I'm still pretty impressed with the card, even though it's small. Like, it definitely doesn't have a lot of the things that I want to see in cards these days and 3-drops these days, but I've just seen it draw enough cards enough times that I respect the card enormously. It's a black card I'm willing to take early. I think it's an A.
Yeah, I think when we first recorded this episode, I would have said it's an S, but the stat line does come up a lot that this card just isn't impacting the board very much. But yeah, you do also feel obligated to kill it. So I think I would keep it just out of S because it doesn't create that sort of like immediate ending the game pressure, but the pressure of the card advantage is gonna generate is enough that you have to respect it.
Mm-hmm. I think I think I made an argument for S last time, just in terms of power level, which I mean, I guess we'll see at the end of the video. This is one that if there's not a lot of other competing S's, I think this ends up being an S. If it's clearly better than like the significant chunk of the other black cards, I think I personally think it plays out like an S. Like it's so often that this card is a 3-mana creature that draws 3 cards, which is an S to me.
I do also wonder how much we're supposed to put like meta adjustments into these tier lists, because like I think when you're playing a bunch of mid-range mirrors where you're playing these small ball like black-red and red-white and black-white that are doing, these granular half-card trades, Morbid Opportunist is incredible. I think the current state of like green being really good, where it's just kind of going so far over the top of some of these decks, I'm not sure how much like drawing an extra couple of cards matters against some of those draws. I still think, like I said, I still think this card's really good. I just think it's better when your matchups tend to be more like granular and small grindy trades as opposed to big mana stuff.
Tim, I would just say that I still do think that ultimately this card on its own, it needs stuff around it. And that's kind of, to me, where I want to put it as an A. I don't think you can just draft a deck and it'll always work. Like, I do think you want to be making plenty of tokens, or, playing with, it's not just, you can't just play with a lot of removal, I don't think, and make this work. Like, you want to be triggering this fast because it will eat a removal spell relatively quickly. It is still small, but yes, I agree with you. It's a really good card. There's 4 cards, just looking at the list, that I think are going to be kind of A or S level, and if I'm in a draft, I would take this probably after the other 3 cards we're going to talk about. So in my mind, that makes this an A, but it's a good card. Yeah. I do like it, and I will take it early.
Let's revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's revisit it once we've got all those other A's and potential S's in place and see where it stands next to those. Because if it's like the top of all of those, then I think it just is an S, but it could be below some of the others there. All right, Thoughtstalker Warlock, another card I like quite a bit. This is 2 and a black, 2/2 Lizard Warlock. It's a menace creature, so 3 mana, 2/2 menace. When it enters, choose target opponent. If they lost life this turn, they reveal their hand, and you choose a non-land card to discard, and otherwise they just discard a card of their choice. So 3 mana, 2/2 menace, they discard a card. If you made them lose life somehow, you get to choose the card they discard. I think this is not competing too much with other hand disruption. I think that's one thing that is missing from Peasant, like in high degree, is good hand disruption, or at least when you shift over from like higher power level cubes with all the thought seizes and stuff like that, and you go to Peasant Cube, you have like Duress, Inquisition. We don't even have Inquisition on Arena. You just don't get a lot of targeted discard. I guess maybe that's why people like Hypnotic Spectre, but this being targeted discard is filling like a gap that I think is really missing from Peasant Cube.
Yeah, this is a really strong card, but you do have to line up your curves such that you are expecting to always have a good 2-drop in play. This card is best friends with Deep Cavern Bat. That's like the gold standard, right? If you can Deep Cavern Bat, take the opponent's removal spell, hit them in the face, cast this, take the next best card in their hand. And at that point, like, it's hard to imagine you've got 2 evasive creatures and you've stripped 2 cards out of your opponent's hand. It's like, it's hard to imagine losing those games. But this is the kind of card that does need some setup. Like, you need good 2s. And that is obviously, like, good Peasant decks should have good 2s, but not all, especially black cards, are good at attacking.
That's the issue. This doesn't necessarily work fantastically well with black cards other than Deep Cavern Bat. But yes, when you turn it on, the card's incredible. If it's not turned on, it's like very whatever. It's just, 3 mana 2/2 menace. Opponent discards a card. It's still fine, but it's not impressive. But when it's turned on, it's so backbreaking enough of the time that I definitely think it's an A. It doesn't get up to S for me personally. I've just seen it not be able to be turned on enough that to me it's more of an A. Again, there's a couple cards we're going to talk about here in a bit that I like more. I don't know how I feel about this versus Morbid Opportunist. Generally speaking, I think if I saw these 2 in a pack, I would take Opportunist first. But it depends on the rest of my deck. If I saw these in pack 3, I definitely could take Thoughtstalker before it.
Yeah, I agree with that. One pro tip here: if your opponent has 1 card in hand, it's better to not Bloodthirst the Thoughtstalker Warlock, because they'll always discard it. Whereas if it's a land and you reveal, you can't actually take the land. I enjoy that play pattern.
One other thing is, like, if you know your opponent has or could have this card and they're making those attacks where it's like you could take the block, you could not take the block, maybe you're not sure. Sometimes you just want to put the block on the creature that they're attacking with to make sure you don't get that bloodthirst trigger or whatever life loss trigger to let them thought seize you. It does come up that you have to take some less than optimal blocks sometimes knowing this card exists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Reminder, we're remaining positive here. Vampire Nighthawk is third in line here. 1 black, 2/3. Fourth in line? Third. Boggart Trawler's already up there. 3 mana, 2/3 flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. Good old classic Zendikar keyword soupy creature, which we have noticed throughout this series. People just like those cards. They like the kind of simple, vanilla plus creatures with a bunch of keywords on them, which is fine if you like those things. Is it fine if you're trying to is it fine if you're trying to, sculpt a really complex, powerful cube? Probably not. But, we always mention, simplicity's sake, there is a reason to want to run cards like this. It does not compare to some of the higher power level stuff we're talking about.
This, if I recall correctly, has basically been a banger in all of its retail formats as well. Like, it's just a generically decent enough card. But like when you start dealing with the more powerful Peasant environments, I do think it gets outclassed pretty quickly. And I would argue it's outclassed by another card we're going to talk about on the list in most cases. But this does give you like the evasion, the death touch, and the lifelink all at the same time. So black is a big deal, and people don't ever calculate that when they're putting cubes together. I feel like I see too many cube sections where there's like 4 black or white cards in a section, and that's going to be very difficult for a lot of drafts to play on curve.
Yeah, that would just be my main, caution to folks who just really like the card. If you do, then go for it. But yeah, it will be castable less often than you'd like it to be. That's just something to keep in mind. But yes, in general, it performs well in limited environments. It's not like it was just in Foundations and it wasn't the best card or anything, but it was a solid non-rare. It was one of the top 20 non-rares in that format. So I don't think it's a bad card, but hard to cast and doesn't make any objects, doesn't draw cards. So not that exciting, but it's a fun card, very nostalgic. I understand people running it.
Mm-hmm. Cool art too.
It was just in Foundations. That was a year and a half ago.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Time is a flat circle,
Yeah. Okay, Bastion of Remembrance. So I think I introduced this video as black 3-drops. It's black 3-drop creatures, and that does include objects that basically, leave a creature on board or become a creature in some way. So Bastion of Remembrance is 2 and a black enchantment. When it enters, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token, and whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life, and you gain a life. And probably the first of, 50 aristocrats on this list, which we have noted throughout a couple videos, is not a dying... excuse the pun, not a dying archetype necessarily, but not one that I think is really keeping up with modern sensibilities. Like, if you go to higher power levels, you're starting to see things like Sephiroth, as like, okay, aristocrats really needs to do something new in order to, have a chance. But I don't think we're seeing that at the Peasant level quite as much. Like, good bodies and aristocrat effects is not a lot. We have not seen a lot of that yet. And I think because of that, Bastion of Remembrance is like not really keeping up with everything else going on around it these days. People love their aristocrats decks. I can say that 50 times here. It's a very tried and true archetype in Peasant that people just like to play with. But I think things are moving away from just like pure aristocrats to the point where Bastion of Remembrance is like just okay if you're doing that. And you know, there's a lot of other 3-drops competing in this same space. So yeah, that's enough rambling from me for this. Well, I guess you should probably give your thoughts about aristocrats like in general here as well, so that we don't rehash that for like every sacrifice related card that comes up.
Yeah, so I'm very down on aristocrats as well as a strategy. I think the problem is that it's so much of what black does at non-rare rarities in limited is creature sacrifice related things that I think it's really hard to get away from in cube, because there's just, you said that it's competing with a lot of other things. It's like, well, kind of, but if you're really trying to seed real themes into your black section for cube, it's like it's hard to come up with anything other than aristocrats. So I understand totally people trying all these cards, because like, what else are you supposed to do? In terms of the specific card, you know, I took this out of my cube a while ago when we got Albed Salvagers and Caesarian Voidborn, which we're going to talk about soon. And I thought that those cards were just going to be slam dunk better than this, because they also trigger on artifacts. This only triggers on creatures. I haven't really found that to be the case, that I like those cards more than this. In fact, I might, in the end, like this more than both of those. I'm not exactly sure, but the fact that you get 2 objects for 3 mana just does matter a lot. It matters a lot in these grindy matchups. You know, it spots you the one creature that you get to just trade off, whereas Voidborn and Salvagers have to stay in play. So I could see liking this more than those. I still don't think it's better than like a C. It's still, you know, niche playable. You have to understand the strength and weaknesses of the archetype and then decide whether or not you want to play payoffs like this, in my mind. So at the moment, I don't feel super inclined to play that much. Of the 3 mana aristocrat and payoffs like this one, but I think you could do worse, I suppose. And the main issue is just that it's really hard right now to do anything in black other than some kind of aristocrat strategy.
Yeah, I think the biggest like plus of this card, other than making 2 game objects, which is very relevant, is that being an enchantment makes it more difficult to interact with. And I think one of the things you want out of these cards is to not get a blowout. Like a lot of these cards set you up to do things that will get you blown out if your opponent has a removal spell. Like, you know, Blood Artist, turn all my creatures sideways, your opponent kills you, Blood Artist, now your attack is terrible, type of thing. And this card just is much less likely to have that happen, since most of the enchantment removal that does exist is also not instant speed in most cubes. You're going to be playing it on creatures. So I kind of have come around that Bastion might actually be better than Voidborn or Salvager, despite those cards reading like they should just be way better. I'm kind of with you, Dan, that I think the difficulty in interacting and spotting the creature there is actually something worth mentioning for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, if we think those cards are better than a lot of the competition and still giving it a C, like that does not bode super well for the archetype.
Agreed.
Okay, that brings us to Nightclubber, which I think is probably on Dan's short list of A/S cards. It's 1 black 2/2 human warrior. When it enters, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn. It has Blitz for 2 and a black, which is an alternative casting cost that gives it haste and sacrifices it at the end of the next end step, but you draw a card when it leaves the battlefield, or when it dies, rather.
Yeah, this card's nuts. I love this card so much. I hear rumblings in discords and calls about people starting to like this a little less, and I think that's crazy. This card's just it just always does the thing. The key thing about this card to understand is don't look at the top right mana cost. It's relevant. You blitz it every time. This is just a removal spell that kills some stuff and draws a card, and you can sacrifice it the turn. One of my favorite play patterns of this card is you blitz it out, you attack with it. They don't want to block it because it's going to die at end of turn, and then you sacrifice it post combat for additional value. You still get the draw off of the blitz effect. So yeah, I love this card. I think it's arguably Black's strongest 3-drop, but there's another one that might push it out. But this card's nuts, and I take it first all the time.
Yeah, this card's incredible. We're not on it at the moment just because it's kind of we've taken a look at the amount of X1 hate, and it's like maybe we're a little too dense on that at times. This comes in and out of the Jank Diver cube for that reason, but it's not because the card isn't good enough. It's because the card is kind of centralizing in the way that it puts games on its back. Incredible card, like really, really powerful.
Yeah, I think S is appropriate for this, which, probably locks in Morbid Opportunist as an A for me, because I do think I put a premium on like almost all X1 hate at this point, but
Yeah.
I think that's gonna. Does anyone see Danielius's camera like, ooh, like?
Oh, really?
Like I think anytime you like move back, your camera tries to like keep you in frame or something.
New
like
setup.
that.
New setup. Sorry, new setup. Who dis? My bad.
One other thing about this that I think makes it even better than some of the other X1 hate. Obviously, drawing a card's really powerful. Like in spots where the X1 hate isn't very good. We've talked about that with Playful Shove. But the fact that this card comes down and can also just like set up a really good combat step, right? You can shrink all of your opponent's creatures, even if it doesn't kill anything. It makes a lot of your opponent's blocks much worse. It's just a very difficult card to play around in basically any configuration of how you use it, whether it's a mini sweeper or a combat trick or whatever.
Well, yeah. So often it's both. So often it's just like, okay, I lose 2 tokens and I can't block this turn, so I take like 7 points of damage, and then they draw a card. It's just the card's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Shrouded Shepherd too, as a very similar card that I think people underrate. Okay, Fellstinger. So 2 back-to-back similar cards. Fellstinger is 2 and a black, 3/2 zombie scorpion. Zombie semi matters for 1 or 2 other cards here, but not going to make a big deal out of it. 3 mana, 3/2 death touch with exploit. When it enters, you may sacrifice any creature. When Fellstinger exploits a creature, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. And one tiny, again, more pro tips from Jank Diver Tim here. If your opponent kills this in response to the exploit trigger, you're still given the option to exploit when that trigger resolves, but you won't actually get anything out of it because Fellstinger has to be on board to exploit something. So if they kill it in response, don't sacrifice a creature. You won't get an effect out of it. There's 3 similar cards on this list that do the 3 mana, 3 power, sacrifice a thing, draw some cards. They all have that similar text, and they all have like different knobs pushed on them. And it looks like the 2 better ones are the 2 more played, which is appropriate.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that is this in the same bracket as the next card, Dan, or is it played more?
It's played slightly more, but they're close.
Yeah, that would have been my guess. Would be this one was the better one, having not seen it in your environment. But we'll talk about the other one here in a second. But the extra flexibility actually does come up. I think the fact that this one too, it doesn't happen often, but like killing it on the stack and leaving your opponent opportunities to misplay on it is like kind of a crappy play pattern. This card's just like, it was cool when it came out, and I think it does contribute to that whole black aristocrats thing being the only thing that they do. But this card's just, it's whatever, it's fine. If you play it, like I'm not gonna fault you for it. It's a totally fine card, just doesn't spark any joy for me.
So what I'll say is that I brought this back after switching to the next card. I brought this back, and now I'm both. And I'm at 540, so that makes it more palatable to run multiple copies of things like this. But what I've been finding is that black can just really struggle for card draw, for card advantage. And I do think that like if you are tilting your environment towards aristocrats, because that's like the only thing for black to be doing, then having some amount of your aristocrats synergy stuff being card draw, I think, is actually really important. Now, black already has stuff like Deadly Dispute, Fanatical Offering, and the like, Eviscerators inside, etc. So maybe if you're just running all those, you don't necessarily need to run these cards. But then again, these are creatures that you can bring back from the yard with like a back for seconds or whatever. And so I think that these are actually kind of important in the aristocrats lane. If you're on 360, I think you can just choose one of these effects most likely, and you'll be fine. But if you're at a larger cube size, I would consider running multiple, because I do think the card advantage is actually really important for these grindy black decks to be able to compete, especially against these new green decks that can go over the top or whatever. You just need the card flow. Your 1-for-1ing plan is not going to work particularly well in black, even if you're running Chupacabras or whatever else. Like you'd need to see more cards. So I like it a fair amount. It's just not incredibly powerful, and I don't know if it's better than the next one.
Yeah. I have a soft spot for Fellstinger. I always have. Maybe my favorite thing to do in all Magic the Gathering is sign in blood my opponent for a win. So I do like. I don't want to knock it up a grade for that, but I always put value on the sign in bloods that can target my opponents, because it comes up sometimes and makes you feel like really big brain when you do it.
And just real quick, what I'd say is the more you're playing with cards like this that really need you to sacrifice a creature to do anything of relevance at all, the more you want to be playing with creatures that like want to be sacrificed or are reasonably happy to be sacrificed. Your shambling gas, your greedy freebooters, et cetera, et cetera. Don't just assume that you're going to have something in play that you're happy to sacrifice to this card. And if you don't have something, then this is awful.
This is also another point in Bastion of Remembrance's quarter where spotting you the thingy that I want to now turn into 2 cards that the other versions of that effect cannot do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's also worth noting, like, not to get into aristocrats deep dive here, but like, these cards all compete with each other, so like it's just a hard strategy to get right in a cube design too, like the balance of sack fodder versus sack outlets and synergizing that with other colors. It's really easy to overload on, oh, Fellstinger's good, Faller's Faithful's good, all these other sack outlets are good, but I need the sack fodder, and then, you know, how am I going to feed all the different sack outlets? It's a hard thing to get right. I don't know if there's ever been like a primer out there of, you know, how to do aristocrats in cube, but it feels like people just play a bunch of good effects and never put a lot of consideration into like fodder versus sack outlets versus, you know, all the competition with all the different effects going on.
Yeah, well, we can talk about it more in a minute, but I do want to just piggyback off that to say that I think the open-ended sack outlets, that is the ones that give you an arbitrary amount of things that can sack, stuff like Umbral Collared Zealot, I think are a little overrated as a block because you're not often going to have that many things to sack. Like, sacking one thing is usually fine. So we'll talk about it more with one of these cards in a minute. But I do think that's something that people are guilty of doing, is just assuming you're going to have, you know, 5 wriggling grubs in play.
It's me. I'm guilty. Anyways, I gave Zelda an S in the 2-drop tier list, and I wish I could take that one back. But anyways,
Nope.
All right, next card.
Okay, so Faller's Faithful, this is the other Fellstinger, you know, side grade here. 2 and a black, 3/1, human wizard. When it enters, destroy up to 1 other target creature. If that creature wasn't dealt damage this turn, its controller draws 2 cards. And, you know, synthesize that if you never played EOE or haven't really thought about the card. The default is you can destroy your own creature and draw 2 cards, which, you know, kind of like you would do with Fellstinger or the card coming up later. You do have the option to destroy your opponent's creature. They will draw 2 cards, but if that opens up a lethal swing, then obviously you're very happy to do that. And there are some instances where you can finish off a creature and they won't draw the cards at all. So, you know, you could play full shove and then Faller's Faithful to finish off that creature, or, you know, finish off something that was dealt damage in combat. So there's more play to this one for sure. You know, the EOE disaster was you target your opponent's creature thinking you're going to kill them in a couple turns, and that just never worked out. So you really only ever do that line if you have lethal or are confident that you're going to present lethal like within a turn or 2. Otherwise, you can't just give your opponent 2 cards for destroying something. So that text only matters in instances where you're winning the game off of it. Otherwise, I think the default is still sack your own creature to draw 2 cards.
Well, the only pushback I'd have on that is, again, when this happened to me most recently, it was Fuller who was playing a deck that just had more inevitability than mine, and I had a 6/7 in play. The green, the green creature that naturalizes as an adventurer into the 6/7. And he just couldn't deal with that card in his deck, except for Faller's Faithful. And having access to the Faller's Faithful won him the game, because if not for that one card, I would have won with my creature, and he didn't have any removal for it except for this. And it didn't matter that I drew 2 cards. The game didn't end for like 6, 7, 8 more turns, but he just had more inevitability in general than I did. So I've come way up on this card. When I originally tested it, I was thinking, I'll just switch Stinger for this. It's just a way to get new cards in the cube, get some, you know, a refresh to the list. But in the end, I do think I like it more than Stinger because of those potential play patterns that it has. It's not by a huge amount. I still think you can just kind of choose whichever one sparks more joy for you. But if you haven't tried Faithful, I would recommend it. It is a more interesting card than Stinger for sure.
Yeah, as pointed out by one of our other co-hosts, I tend to like cards that let you feel Galaxy Brain on occasion. And so, this is the kind of card that'll occasionally let you get to feel Galaxy Brain.
And in general, you know, I think the utility of this card in your cube will depend a bit, at least, on how many actual Doomblade effects you have in your environment versus cards like Cut Down or whatever that are mostly, you know, really efficient ways of dealing with smaller creatures. My removal in my black section has trended over time much more towards smaller removal that's hyper efficient, and that leaves the black decks in some situations sometimes in my cube where they just can't deal with the big green creature. And so having a way to do that, even at card disadvantage, I think is relevant, even if that's not, ideally what you want to be using this card for. The fact that it can do that is a nice point in its favor.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big point in its favor because none of the other cards can straight up destroy an opponent's creature, which, your instance is a completely different thing than like sometimes 5% of the game, 5% of the time, you just win because you popped your opponent's blocker. I still value the Death Touch on the Stinger, which, in that scenario, Stinger can just block the 6/7.
True.
I do value being able to target your opponent. And if you want to feel real big brain, shocking your opponent's Fell Stinger in response and then having them still sacrifice a creature, that's pretty big brain. Sure. So, I would reverse these, but not by too much. Like, I think you're fair. Like, you're safe if you want to play with this sort of effect. You're safe to play whichever one like appeals to you most, and they'll both be fine.
Yeah, I think I'm in the corner with Dan that I like this slightly more than Fell Stinger, but it is kind of such a marginal thing. I would just stick them right next to each other and pick which one you like.
Okay, Mindless Conscription. This has a modern Horizons 3 symbol on it. It's 2 and a black enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, and whenever you draw your third card each turn, you amass zombies 3. So if you don't already have an army, you make a 0/0 army and put 3+1/+1 counters on it. If you already control an army, you put 3+1/+1 counters on an army you control. And tiny itty bitty little thing here is if you have changelings, you can amass onto changelings, if that matters for you at all.
Some people you have to amass on that sort of stuff. You have to amass.
You have to.
You must. Yes. Mindless. So 3 mana 3/3, and then anytime you can draw 3 in a turn, you can either get another 3/3 if the first one's dealt with, or just grow it into 6/6 or 9/9. You do sometimes see 9/9 zombie tokens on board because of this. Yeah,
this card is strong. You do have to work for it, but there's a lot of ways to do that. We just talked about 2 of them. You got like Deadly Dispute and Fanatical Offering as others. Blue cards are this card's most commonly played with blue cards, but I've played it in a red-black deck and it was pretty good. I had a few ways to trigger it, and I got a 6/6 in a lot of games. And then it is a game object for like that space, but this isn't exactly like Dream Pixie card. It's a little expensive for something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's maybe the biggest knock on the card is just that it's relatively narrow. It's mostly a Grixis gold card and really a blue-black gold card, but it's so powerful in that blue-black lane, and I don't think that like blue-black is hurting enough in our environments in general, I'd say, that I don't mind giving it a card like this that's going to be played in that lane like 80% of the time or whatever, because it's so strong. It's best friends with the Bath Song, and the effects that you mentioned already. So yeah, I like the card a lot. It has come down a little bit in my estimation over time, just because I've seen it so rarely outside of the blue-black lane, but it's really strong there.
Yeah, if you ever get the extra token off of it, it's Trumpeting Herd, right, for 3 mana, which is really good, and it's a permanent on board for Boomerang basics and stuff like that can reuse it. So the output, I mean, if you have to put it in a deck, I think that can conceivably get, trigger it at least like 2 more times. Otherwise, it's just a 3 mana 3/3. But if your deck can do that, and some people go really hard on that blue-black MH3 like draw 3 lane, it's pretty good. I think there too. Also like sneaky kind of side payoff for like just draw 2 decks, because draw 2 decks usually just have enough ways to draw 3. So
yeah, usually you want to pair this with cards that have the ability to draw extra cards in a turn without spending mana. So things like Shoreline Looter, or like I said, Bath Song, or the Modern Age, etc. But to me, or Frodo Baggins, I'm happy to play this card in any deck if I have like 2 to 3 ways that can trigger this. I think that's enough for me, because this will just sit and play, and eventually you'll get there. But yeah, you do want to be thinking about that during deck construction.
Yeah, like the floor
is Frodo. Is Frodo Baggins an army? Because he sure looked like a one-man army last night when we were.
The news is good on Frodo for anybody who's interested in the update there. Yeah. The news is good so far.
Maybe I can pop a Selesnya tier list up here somewhere on the screen.
And just move Frodo up to S up there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Albed Salvagers, 2 and a black, 2/3, Human Artificer Warrior. Whenever this or another creature or artifact you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. Funnily enough, the same set that gave us Sephiroth. I consider this for 2 seconds in the mainline cube, and then they were like, "Oh, Sephiroth's here, by the way." Funny how quickly like this card came, looked kind of interesting. I think got pushed out almost immediately by the EOE guy that we'll talk about, and then we're at the point where we're like, are these even good at all? Going back to the aristocrats conversation, the advantage here is that it triggers off artifacts. That's going to be true of the Voidborn as well, but the 3-drop glut of cards that do this but don't seem to pan out is like, it's enormous. There's so many cards. This looks like it should be a good payoff and a cross synergistic card for people who are doing artifacts in black and, you know, Rakdos and stuff like that. But it just plays out so, like, it's so anemic. Like, it just doesn't seem like a very powerful card in practice.
I feel like for this effect to work, we're going to need this creatures plus artifacts line of text, and then it's going to have to, like, spot us a treasure or a food or something in order to get over. Like, the more treasure and things like that you're playing with, the conceivably better that these are, right? Because the main reason you would want this card over some of the other variants is that it can work on artifacts. It's just that those aren't free, and there's so much, even in the trinket space, right? There's so much competition for what you're going to use your trinkets with. And all the other things you can be doing are better than just, I'm going to, like, crack my trinket and drain you for one, or I'm going to incidentally drain you for one with this anemic 3-drop. They don't contribute to the game plan, right? They're payoffs for it, but they're not even particularly good payoffs.
You want a 3-mana Marionette Apprentice is basically what you're saying.
I would love a 3-mana Marionette
This card
Apprentice.
needs to be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The argument for Bastion is that Bastion is the two objects for 3-mana version of this effect, and that just might be, by its nature, a better card, even though I don't love that card either. You know, it's just, Salvagers is undersized. It doesn't give you an ETB. It doesn't protect itself in any way. It doesn't really, you know, it's not helping you block well. And it needs things to leave play to do anything at all. So, like, just comparing this to the red versions of this effect that we've been getting, you know, Molten Gatekeeper and Wefstalker Ardent, those things need things entering play to do things. That's just way, way, way better than needing things to leave play. So, you know, outside of combo context specifically, which I had, when we were originally talking about these cards, I was talking about that a lot. And I was like, man, we've got Salvagers, we got Voidborn, we got Apprentice, now we have the free sack outlets. Like, we can go to Combo Town, kind of, or, like, you know, not full combo, but we can kill people from 10 is what I was thinking with these cards, and that just hasn't panned out at all. I've been extremely unimpressed, but you know, there's potential here, especially with treasure tokens. And if you're making a lot of those objects, I think it's like, okay, I still am playing this in my cube over Voidborn and Bastion actually at the moment, just because it's the largest one of the three. But I have zero confidence in that. I think you can kind of choose whichever one of these you like the most. That we're going to talk about these payoffs and see. But I also think you could just leave them out and you won't miss them. Is my bet.
Okay, that brings us to Fire Nation Trebuchet, which I think we were all a little bit surprised to see so high up, but there's some nuance to this card. It's 2 and a black, 0/4 with Defender and Reach. Whenever you attack with anything, create a 2/1 colorless construct artifact creature token with fly-in named Ballistic Boulder that's tapped and attacking. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Small note here, this is one of those instances where being an artifact is probably downside more than it is upside, and being a wall means it can't block Juggernaut, so that's probably pretty bad too. There's also a similar card from Lord of the Rings that I think I don't remember the differences, but it's largely just worse.
Yeah,
so
it's just worse.
This was from TLA. So 3 mana 0/4 that gives you an extra 2/1 attacker whenever you attack with something else. Though this thing can't attack itself, obviously, so you need to surround it with other things. It does stone nothing on its own other than block flyers.
Yeah, so this kind of has the same barrier to entry that Thoughtstalker Warlock has. You need 2-drops that are good at attacking, and then I really like cards like this that provide you with opportunities for synergy. It's just not always going to be easy to realize those synergies, but this is cool. It gives you like an unbounded potential amount of game objects and like death triggers. That's cool. I do like the idea, but like you have to have a 2-drop that can attack. Like that's the problem in black.
Well, it's not just that you have to have that 2-drop that can attack. You're then spending 3 mana on a card that doesn't help you attack and only works if you're attacking. We've now described all the downsides of the card, but it is a very cool card. Like the fact that it makes an artifact, it makes a flyer. There's you don't have to sacrifice the thing till the end step. That's a big deal. So you can use the token that you're making in second main with your Fellstinger or whatever else. So I think the card is really cool. There's not a lot of cards like this in black that are even close to playable in my mind. So, and to me, the one thing keeping it out of like D for me is that it performed really well in white black in TLA. Now, that was not like a particularly good archetype, but in that archetype, this is a good performer. So it at least has some evidence that there is an environment, a deck in an environment where this can do work. So it would not disappoint me to see this in a cube. Honestly, I would be intrigued to try it out. I'm just very skeptical unless you have a lot of cheap black creatures that attack, or that are good at attacking, that have menace, that have flying. If you don't, I think this is just going to be hard to enable.
Yeah, I can see this going well with what's the Revolt card, the white black enchantment. It's similar to the TLA one.
Not Told. Hidden Stockpile.
Hidden Stockpile, right? Yeah, that kind of space, I could see this doing some stuff. Good with like an Oni called Anvil and things like that. So yeah, there's some synergy to be had.
And that's another downshift when you go from aristocrats at high power levels to aristocrats. Where are all the cards that make a token every turn, right? Like you don't get your Bitter Blossoms and your Jadars and stuff like that. That's why I liked Lagomos, in the red black review, is you just don't get a lot of cards that are like, here's a piece of fodder every turn, do what you want with it. You lose out on that a lot, and this at least promises that. I'm not a fan of cards that make your removal like twice as good by essentially nerfing 2 cards, which is what this can sometimes do. So I suspect this card is probably not very strong, but it's played a lot, and we haven't really considered it amongst the 3 of us. So this is like to the commenters, if you're watching this and you play Fire Nation Trebuchet, like how's it doing for you, and what are you doing to like consistently enable it or pay off those ballistas?
Wow, Fire Navy Trebuchet. Wow, just
What did I say?
Navy
Fire
erasure
Nation?
Right there. Yeah, Navy erasure.
Oh,
Wow,
okay. Well, that's their fault for using Fire Navy in a set with the Fire Nation being.
Also, it makes flyers and navies have boats. This doesn't.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't know why I'm Scryfall and Phyrexian Rager. Like I don't know what the card is. 2 and a black, 2/2 Phyrexian Horror. When it enters, you lose a life and draw a card. Classic
This card
cantrip
was good in
creature.
1998 or whenever it was first printed.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a D, right?
Yeah, I think it's a D for like cube curation purposes. Like, these cards are always C's or whatever, C to C plus, and retail limited. But I think the other than the fact that it has a really simple text box and it's a nostalgic card, and I think those are good enough reasons to run it if you value those things. But there's a lot more interesting cards that can be synergized around.
There's the 2 mana 1/1 that does the same thing. Like just you would just play that instead.
I agree.
Most of the time.
All right, let's talk about the goat himself.
Teld. Yeah, I was gonna toss this one to you, Teld. You're big champion. I think both of you are big champions, and I'm right there with you on this one.
So this is Vengeful Rebel. It's 2 and a black for a 3/2 Aetherborn Warrior, and it has Revolt. When it ETBs, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. So we had talked about this card a ways back as we'd realized it existed, and hadn't really thought about it given the kind of trinket revolution that we were under, where this is like an easier ask to get in the door. This is from Kaladesh, so it's an older card, and we kind of suspected it would be good, and I was not suspecting as how trivially easy it is to enable this card and just play it and kill something on like 3 mana on turn 3 sometimes. It is kind of absurd, on top of the fact that it stacks with stuff like Back for Seconds and Lively Dirge and all these like small ball reanimatory cards and recursion cards. I've seen this card now splash as the only black card in a deck multiple times. I think, to be fair, it may have been Dan 2 different times, but it's trivially easy because the treasure that you use to splash the card also enables the Revolt on the card. Like, you can ramp with an Eldrazi spawn to help pay for it. That also triggers the Revolt. Chromatic Star and Wizard Rockets we've talked about are really easy ways to like set this up for a turn 3 play. It is like kind of surprisingly easy how simple it is to trigger this card and then just kill like your opponent's best creature on turn 3 or 4. It's really strong.
Well, in fetch lands, to me, fetch lands is another huge part of why this is way better than it was maybe pre-MH3. But yeah, yesterday I played 2 decks. They were green decks. I played this in both decks, and it was maybe the best card in the deck both times. It's just very, very, very strong, and yes, the ability to then recur it. It's a Chupacabra for 3 mana. That's just the way to think about it. Yes, it can't deal with the largest creatures, the other huge green creatures in play, but it deals with everything else, and it does so incredibly efficiently. So yeah, I think it's an easy S at this point, and I still think I prefer Clubber, but it's close. I don't know. If I saw these pack one, pick one. I'm not sure which one I'd take.
Yeah,
so
I think Clubber has a higher ceiling than this card, so I'm okay leaving it higher. But I think this card as a turn, like a curve play, turn 3, turn 4, it's usually going to be better. But Clubber's going to break the game open on like turn 5, turn 6.
Yep. I think it was the Arena Affinity Cube that turned Dan onto it, who then turned us onto it, and then it became very clear as like, why haven't we been playing with this card forever? And Scryfall search Revolt, and it's like, we don't have to worry about all those other Revolt cards. Though Rallier, I think is something that I've got slotted to talk about here for an update. But Yeah, Etherborn is good, and it's played in enough cubes that other people clearly know that it's good, and we just kind of came back around to it to the point where it's absurd. Actually, it's just very strong. Okay, another Kaladesh block card here, Weaponcraft Enthusiast, 2 and a black, 0/1, Etherborn Artificer. It has Fabricate 2, so you can misclick and put 2+1/+1 counters on it, or you can create 2 1/1 servo tokens. So it's like a black hop to it with 1 less power, but it's on a body instead of a sorcery, which is better for sure. And makes artifact tokens. Makes 2 artifact tokens. Three bodies and 1 for black is definitely in that fodder territory that we were talking about. Your wriggle and grub territory. So I think if you are interested in both artifact synergies and aristocrats, this is probably a card you're looking to. If you're not pushing those super hard, it is still just like 3 mana for 2/3 worth of stats. So you got to be doing something with those bodies.
Yeah, and unlike white, which can utilize the bodies from hop to it in an aggressive sense, it's just much harder for black to utilize enthusiast in that way. Obviously, you're also just getting less power out of this than hop to it, which makes it harder to use it in an assertive way. And like we've been saying, the aristocrats strategy in general is just kind of in the mud in our opinion at the moment, so it's hard to get excited about the card. You're right, the artifact part of this matters. The truth is, when I originally saw this card way back when it was spoiled, it was like, holy crap, like this card's insane. And it was good. It was decent in its original limited format. Then they brought it back for Kaladesh Remastered, and it was not an important card at all. It was like my recollection was like a C or a C+, something like that. So it's just like okay, but not impressive. And it was a little bit surprising. Then we got Tinker's Tote in I want to say LCI, something like that. And Tinker's Tote is actually a very similar card to this. It's an object that then makes 2 1/1s. This is an object that makes 2 1/1s. And Tinker's Tote was also not all that impressive. It's fine. It's a fine enabler for some specific lanes. And that's how I view Enthusiast. It's a fine enabler for some specific lanes, but not a card that I'm ever taking early. Not a card that's like signaling a lane. It's like if I'm already doing aristocrat stuff really heavily, especially if I'm leveraging artifacts, you can play this, you can run it. It's just the rate is not impressive on this effect. Even though it looks kind of similar to hop to it, it's really not.
Yeah, no comments.
No comments from Teld. So moving on from there, we got Caesarean Voidborn. We've alluded to this one a couple times already. It's 2 and a black, 2/2 vampire soldier. When this creature or another creature or artifact you control dies, targeted opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life, and it has warp for black. And lump it right in there with the Albed Salvagers, where this card reads like, when it came out to me, it read like almost a perfect peasant card. It just doesn't play that way. Even with warp being like cutesy and letting you do maybe get an extra ping off somewhere when you sacrifice a blood token early on or something like that. The sum of the parts here don't add up, and again, it's another 3-drop doing the same stuff that all these 3-drops are doing.
It's kind of like almost an extra knock against this card, given how busted warp is as a mechanic, that this is still just kind of like a whatever card that doesn't do anything.
Well, the warp on this is, I think, the most fake of all the warp costs that we've talked about in tier list so far, because like part of the advantage of, say, Webstalker Ardent is you warp it and then you add things to the board that ping them, and then Ardent goes into exile. Voidborn asks you to do the opposite. It's like, okay, warp this down, have stuff leave the board, then this also leaves the board, and now you just have like no board. And you're like, wait, did I actually get ahead from using this warp cost?
Yeah.
So that's why for now I'm on Salvagers over Voidborn, because I just think the larger body matters more than the warp cost on this specific card on this specific effect. So I think all 3 of these to me are relatively mid, based on everything that I have seen in Peasant lately at our power level. But I think you could probably pick one of these and run one of these, and it'll be fine. But they're fairly niche. You're only playing them in the most aristocratic lanes you can get, and I just don't think they're that important. They're so much worse than Marionette's Apprentice. There's just a huge gap between these cards and that card.
Yeah, and really that's not fair to these cards, because Marionette Apprentice is a Modern Horizons card and it's incredibly busted. But that is the case. It is what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. If I had better editing skills, I would take Teld's clip after Weaponcraft Enthusiast, where he's like no notes, and just put that after every single comment on every single. Skullport Merchant, aka Sailor of Means, here is 2 and a black, 1/4 Dwarf Citizen. When it enters, create a treasure token, and you can pay 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature or treasure to draw a card. So you do get 2 objects in one here. You get kind of a, I think, reasonably costed sacrifice outlet. No, it can't sack artifacts, just treasure specifically. But, to Teld's point earlier, this does make the object to go with it to use on its own ability. So it spots you the first sacrifice. I think this is a long-standing card. I think it's still decent as far as like value generate and sack outlets go, but it's definitely not like the power level of stuff has caught up to this card for sure.
Yeah, and there's just a lot fewer treasures in Peasant than I feel like there even was when it came out. Like as time goes on, I think this card gets worse on multiple fronts. One is it's harder to justify the 2-mana sacrifice. It's just not as efficient as it once was, and then also so many of the new objects that we're getting that we want to play with aren't treasures. They're giving us all these different interesting kinds of objects, and that just makes this card narrower and narrower. So I think it's still a solid card. I still play with it a fair amount. I do think, like I was saying before, it's important to have card draw in these black grindy decks. And so having some number of cards like this is good. I just don't think it has to be this one. But this still eats a removal spell a large percentage of the time. People are afraid of it. It's hard to point your removal elsewhere when this is in play. So it's often going to be like 3 mana, make a treasure, eat your opponent's removal. And that's still solid. I think it's a high C, maybe the best of the Cs we've talked about.
Yeah, I think comparing these to the two guys that kill a thing to draw 2 cards, the biggest difference here is that those cards in spots where your opponent doesn't have good blockers, you can just turn them sideways. And that is a quality that as Magic goes on, especially with the rise of these like over-the-top green decks, I really value when my cards are able to turn sideways and hit my opponent for, 3 points of damage to try to get them within range of burn or something like that.
And a lot of my rating here is just from seeing it in play. Like, it's just become less and less scary to me over time. It used to be a real scary, like, oh, I got to find my removal spell, and it's just not, it doesn't feel that way anymore. That's why I'm docking it.
Yeah. Think about it with pizza, though. It fixes you. It ramps you.
With which
sacrifice?
With which pizza?
The pizza.
Everything.
Everything
pizza.
Oh, with everything pizza. Oh,
everything
okay.
pizza. Come on. Yeah, it gets you to converge on your.
Oh, it's because it's a treasure. Yeah, called. I see. I get it. Yeah, I like it. There you
go. Okay, Nantuko Husk sticking around here is a 2 and a black 2/2 zombie insect. You can sacrifice any creature, including the husk itself, to give the husk +2/+2 until end of turn. This is the all-in classic. I'm going to sacrifice 7 creatures at the same time with 2 Blood Artist effects and 14 you or whatever, or fling this or whatever. That is not how this strategy works anymore. Or like that, you can try to build towards that strategy, but if your opponent plays Disruption, which you probably have in your Peasant Cube, this sort of thing just never works out.
Yeah, this is just what I was talking about earlier. These like open-ended sack outlets that it's like give you a dream, I think are really just traps. The dream is a nightmare. It's a nightmare if you realize you've played a 3-mana 2/2 with virtually no text box for most of the game.
Yeah, to make this work, you'd have to like really have a very dedicated lane where you're playing, the cards that like return 3/1 drops from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is like the best version of like the reanimate your whole graveyard effects we have access to. Because when Husk has been good, the most recent time it was good in Standard was in loop decks where you're building a board, then you sack the whole board, then you reanimate the whole board, you sack it again, you reanimate again, you're going crazy like that. And even there, I think I would just rather have the cheaper unbounded sacrifice effect than the 3-mana one that just can die so easily. So I think these days it's hard to justify, but you have to have like a very specific lane that you're intending for this, and it needs to be combo oriented in my mind to care about this.
Yeah, in addition to getting the bring back 3/1/1s, we need to be like Nested Shambler ×3. We need a bunch of dies into 1/1 type cards. It's such a big ask for these kind of cards, and even then, this card gets chump blocked. So you also need a way to give it trample. You need like a Monstrous Rage or a Hunter's Talent or something.
Yeah, and check out the D tier here being all the classic, like beloved. People like these cards, nostalgia picks. All right, Arnine Deathbloom Botanist. This was had not been released the first time we did this, so now we can reflect on it a little bit, having played it a tiny bit. This is 2 and a black 2/2 legendary vampire druid with Death Touch, and whenever a creature you controls with power or toughness 1 or less dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Teld, have you gotten a sense for my sense is this card like probably shouldn't last very much longer. Like it's neat at best,
Yeah, my recollection is seeing it in 2 games where somebody was playing it, and in the one game he played it with an Umbral Caller Zealot and 3 1/1s and played and domed his opponent for 6, and it looked incredible. And then the other game he played it on turn 3 as a 3-mana 2/2, and it looked atrocious. So like, you know, if you're wanting to live the dream, the output on this card, I stand by what I said in the review episode, the output on this card being double of all the rest of them means that it's much more interesting from like a combo-y, you know, we're going to sack like 5/1/1 type of space, right? It's really, the ceiling here like is way higher, but like the floor is abysmal because a lot of times this card just doesn't even trigger. It awkwardly doesn't trigger with a bunch of random cards that you might be playing too that you don't even think about. Any card that buffs any other card can turn this card off randomly. So like it just really high variance card. I think if you're looking for something cool, it does give people like a dream to live for, but I don't think that dream is particularly strong. I think these other cards are more reliable if less exciting.
I'm fine. I'm just fine throwing it in with all these. Honestly, it's like I just don't feel strongly enough that this is worse than these other effects. I did maybe Bastion's better, but uncleared me. When I went for it, I don't think it's a great card. It was terrible in Secrets of Strixhaven. There wasn't really a lane for it because pest tokens weren't really a thing in that environment. So I don't want to ding it too hard, but it was so bad in that format that it's like it just kind of shows you what the floor looks like. You know, if you're not enabling this to an extreme degree. So, but yeah, I think it's kind of similar. Ultimately, I think you probably could choose any one of these. Aristocrat payoff, draining effects and be okay with it. But if you are doing the Arnon one, I would be thinking about, make sure that you have plenty of things that you're looking to sacrifice this. It does not count artifacts like the Salvagers and Voidborn do. So you have to, be intentional about this card if you're including it.
Yeah.
As we mentioned,
another pro
really
tip.
good with Eldrazi Spawn.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Another pro tip, we watched Fuller play an Archfiend of Sorrows against his opponent who had a board full of 2/2s, and turns out when you shrink all the creatures and they die, they have 1 or less power, and Fuller killed himself with his own infest. So
that's funny.
So
that was kind of hilarious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, it is kind of -1/-1 protection in a way. That's interesting.
A little bit, yeah. But I don't think we'll be playing with it for too much longer, but. Soul Coil Viper is 2 and a black, 2/3 snake. It has black, tap, sacrifice it. Return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. You can only activate that as a sorcery.
Well,
yeah, I mean, if you want to be doing the reanimate stuff, in my mind, I would rather be using cards like Animate Dead and Necromancy, even those cards are really strong. And if you're like, well, those cards are too strong, that's why I'm running the Soul Coil Viper, I would just say that is now you're turning your environment into like a very slow environment for this to be particularly effective. You can't be running 1 mana removal that just snipes this because you need to untap with this, and other stuff has to be going on for this to be relevant at all. So I know people really like the reanimate lane. It's not just they like it. Again, going back to what I said before, it's unclear what you're supposed to be doing in black. And so if reanimate is the thing you've landed on, I could at least understand coming to this card. I think I prefer other reanimate effects enough better than this that I would just say it's probably not a card you should play.
I have no comments.
Yeah. plug it in. Yeah, I thought this would be cool at one point to like turn your like small ball unearth effects into bigger reanimation, kind of like chain them together, but it's just too slow. And finality counters are like bad if you're doing the reanimation thing anyway. So Plague Crafter is up next. This is sorry if you can hear that motorcycle outside. 2 and a black, 3/2 human shaman. When it enters, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If they can't, they discard a card.
Yeah, so
Fleshbag Marauder.
Yeah.
Archetypical card here.
I like that this card really can't miss. That is an upside that some of the other Fleshbag Marauders don't have, but usually this is going to be like your opponent sacks a 1/1 token or something.
Yeah, that's the issue is that, as people have commented to us a bunch, that as there's just been a lot of 1/1 proliferation in Cube, the same stuff that makes Nightclubber so strong makes Playcrafter a lot weaker. But I can certainly imagine environments where you're not playing with a ton of tokens where this card is actually very strong. So I think that like maybe not for our environments, but for a lot of environments in paper that people are running, this card could be quite solid. So I would not put it lower than C. I think it's probably the best of the 3 mana versions of this effect that kind of do this thing.
Yep. All right. Lord Skitter's Butcher. What was the name for this? What was the nickname here? That's it. Rat a 2/3. Yeah. 2 and a black, 2/3 rat peasant. When it enters, choose one. Create a 1/1 black rat creature token that can't block.
I just saw the camera.
You may sacrifice. Huh?
I just saw the camera thing with Dan, like the camera zooming in.
Oh yeah, it's like whoa. Option number 2, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, scry 2, then draw a card. Or option 3, creatures you control gain menace until end of turn.
Was this the most overrated card from LCI or from Wilds of Eldraine?
Yeah, probably. It looks a lot like, Fell Stinger with optionality, but it's not because you only draw the one card. The Scry 2 draw card is like, I don't know, kind of close to draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
You don't have to lose the 2 life when it happens, but it doesn't have Death Touch. There's some problems.
Really suck too.
Rat tokens stink.
They can't, not being able to block is a unbelievably bad line of text. I actually think the best thing you can do with this card is use option 3 and give all your creatures menace. I think that's actually the most powerful, only good option on this card. And in that case, it's a 2/3 that isn't contributing to the aggression itself. It's a payoff. So like whatever.
The problem with the card is that none of these modes you're particularly excited about. And we've talked before about how like bad optionality isn't real optionality. I don't think this quite is in that bucket. I think the optionality is like decent, and part of it's that the effects are so different. It's like one helps you build the better board, one helps you close the game, one helps you draw cards. Like I think that there's enough here that I still like the card a fair amount. I ran it for a long time. I'm not on it currently. I prefer at the moment the card draw output from Faithful and Stinger, but I think you could run this card and it will be fine. But I do think it's generally slightly outclassed by those previous cards.
Sure. Liliana's Devotee is up next. 2 and a black, 2/3 human warlock. Your zombies get +1/+0. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, you can pay 1 in a black, 2 mana total to create a 2/2 black zombie, which basically a 3/2.
There was a time where I considered this one of the better black cards in Cube. We are well past those times though.
Yeah, you kind of need Eldrazi spawn with this, or you need free sack outlets, minimally with this. But even with all that, it's still a 3 mana 2/3. And okay, that zombie line is okay. I'm looking at cards on this list, looking for zombies. We have like 1 zombie so far that we've talked about 2, I guess. So I don't know. I guess if you really want a zombie lane in your environment, then I assume that this is one of the cards you'll look to first. But we're not huge fans of typal synergies in Cube unless the card is kind of free and really strong on its own, and this card is not that in my mind.
Yeah. No, save it for the typal stuff. And
yeah, I mean,
it'll be fine there.
Compare this to Imperious Perfect, which is a card that I'd say we weren't super down on, but definitely not an exciting card, and it's much easier to jump through the hoops on this. So this comparatively, I think it's just a much harder card to get going.
Agreed.
Yeah, well, that's a guaranteed 2/2 every turn if you want it to be that, right? This is not guaranteed at all, and has a higher mana investment.
The mana investment is the hardest part. At our power levels, you do not have 2 mana to spend on this thing until the later stages of the game.
Yep. All right, Grim Dancer from Ikoria, 1 black, 3/3 Nightmare. Grim Dancer enters the battlefield with your choice of 2 different counters on it from among Menace, Death Touch, and Lifelink. Build your own monster.
It's very similar to Nighthawk. It's a 3/3, which matters quite a lot. I think you're often going to go Menace Lifelink with this when you're on the front foot. When you're on the back foot, you go Death Touch Lifelink. And I think that, for me, that makes it slightly better than Nighthawk, just that you have a little bit of optionality there, and it's a larger creature, but it has most of the same problems of Nighthawk. It's really hard to cast. It doesn't have an it doesn't have a card advantage or object advantage ability to it. So for those reasons, it's not really a card that I'm particularly interested in. It was really cool and good in Ikoria. But I think if you're playing Nighthawk for nostalgic reasons, then you can continue to do that. I don't think Grim Dancer is enough better that you have to switch that out.
Yeah, I think this is a mostly better card than Nighthawk. But I think the cubes that would be interested in Nighthawk, even if it's not nostalgia, if it's simplicity, I think the tracking on the counters is enough more that I would just run Nighthawk. So in that case, I think it's a better card than Nighthawk, but a less cubable card than Nighthawk.
Sure. Yeah. Paper considerations, which, hey, if you vote us into CubeCon, people, we'll have to figure out how to handle Death Touch counters and stuff. Haven't put much thought into that yet, but Gravelighter up next. This is another one of those fleshbag maraudery type cards. It's 2 and a black, 2/2 spirit with flying. When it enters, you draw a card if a creature died this turn. Otherwise, each player sacrifices a creature.
You're really trying to turn on the second line. I feel like, the first line on this card of like, if a creature died this turn, draw a card. If you're not, then it has all the same problems that we talked about with Plaguecrafter. There's just being a lot more 1/1s in Cube these days. Again, if you're not playing a token heavy Cube, this is going to be probably better. But yeah, if you can turn on that top ability, 3 mana 2/2 draw a card is like best in class, rate for the flying cantrip creatures, but the fact that you're not guaranteed to get that, you kind of have to set it up, makes it definitely worse than those. I think in general, it's worse. That kind of card is slightly worse in black anyways, because black isn't going to be as assertive. So but it's, decent output on the card. You can get 2-for-1s with this. So I think a C is appropriate.
I have no comments.
Gorging Vulture, is that
It's a magic card.
Gotta look this one up real quick. Gorging Vulture is 2 and a black, 2/2 bird with flying. From the Clue set.
No, this is
this is an older card,
yeah,
right?
It's core set 2020. But why was it reprinted in the Clue set? Anyway, 3 mana 2/2 flyer. When it enters, mill 4 cards. You gain 1 life for each creature milled this way. I have to assume the reason this is showing up is people are just going out of their way to support self-mill, maybe even life gain at the same time, and doing it in slightly powered down environments.
Well, I mean, mill's 4. 4 is a lot of cards, but I think that the 2 mana cards that like Surveil 2, which we have multiple of those now, really outclass this quite a lot in my mind. So if you have to both want a depowered environment and want graveyard stuff, like even in a depowered environment, this card is not that exciting unless you're playing like Final Days and Spider Spawning, etc. So I feel, to me, the Surveil is just so much stronger as a keyword than just mill, that I would be willing to take fewer Surveils to play cards like the the DFT 2 mana 1/3 flyer that does Surveil 2 on ETB. That's just so much better than this card.
Yeah, and that card also is gonna virtually gain you probably 2 or more life, because it's just a 1/3 is a much better blocker.
Well, it comes down to 2. It's 2 mana card, so it can actually block their 2-drop.
Winddrake's just not a good stat line, right?
No.
Like, Windrake is just not a good template for a creature. It has to do quite a bit above and beyond that. Okay, Fang Fearless Lassie is up next. It's 2 and a black, 2/3 legendary human warrior. Whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, you draw a card and lose a life. This ability triggers only once each turn, and if you're playing Vanille Cheerful Lassie, it can meld into the big 7/6 keyword soupy kind of creature there, which is really cute if that's the reason you want to play it and see that happen. I think it's super cute that can happen. As a standalone card, this is the first Gravebreak payoff here, and it's not a particularly good one. Like, it doesn't, to Dan's point about cards not standing on their own and needing a lot of other things going on around them, this is like a poster child for that. It just doesn't do anything unless all the engines are already kicking, in which case there are better payoffs than this.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on Gravebreak in general these days? Like, the best payoff in my mind that we have at the moment is the black room that gives you
Cadaver
2/2s. Yeah, Cadaver Lab. I think that's the one I'm playing, and that has been pretty strong. But it also has another card attached to it. It has that the Unearth or Regrowth or whatever attached to it. So that's the only one that I've played that I've been all that happy with, or that I've even seen be a card that I'm that happy with in your cube or my cube. Like, you were playing Roots for a while, and Roots obviously can be quite powerful, but it also can do like nothing at all. So I will say that they're really pushing Gravebreak as a theme. So I anticipate over time us getting more and more good cards for this lane, but I assume if that happens, then this card's going to be pushed out and there's going to be better payoffs. That's my assumption.
Yeah, I think it's also just like the making bodies on board is just much better than drawing cards, because once you're in a spot where you've got the whole engine running, you're in a big game state already, right? And so what you want is to be able to get further ahead on board. So yeah, I think Cadaver Lab's the only one that really crosses that. Like, Insidious Roots has a higher ceiling, but the card is just so hard to set up in a cube environment. It really strikes me as a constructed card, whereas the Cadaver Lab just kind of works. It's like a 5-mana Gravedigger that then, if you can trigger it, does powerful things. This card's like whatever. Drawing cards is good. I'm not gonna like slam a card into D if it can draw a card every turn or whatever, but the setup to get there is not easy. And losing life in a deck that probably is an attrition deck is also something that I don't think people really consider. But like, you're already in what's probably a slow defensive deck that's gonna have trouble stabilizing, and now you're also paying life for your cards, and that's a rough ask.
It's one of the reasons we didn't really talk much about, but why Fellstinger in my mind is worse than Faithful. Like losing 2 life is a big deal, and yeah, Fang, if it's churning, you're losing potentially a lot of life. So I think the things that are needed for Grave Break to really be a thing, both we need a couple more really good payoffs, and we need like a better version of Reassembling Skeleton or something like that. That
Teacher's Pest.
Yeah, I guess that's the one. Yeah.
What's the one that conjures? There's the card that conjures the Teacher's Pest and makes players.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The
That card is good. But.
Yeah, I think we need more stuff like that before Grave Break really becomes exciting for me.
Yeah, well, and they also, I mean, it's over the last year, it's been in red, white, and blue, green. Like they are messing with it, but in a lot of different color pairs. So it's not like green, black is getting more support necessarily for it. Confectioner. I spelled confectioner wrong. All right, so experimental confectioner, 2 and a black, 2/3 human peasant. When it enters, you create a food token, and whenever you sacrifice a food, you create a 1/1 rat, black rat that can't block. So bad token.
That's got to be an OSHA violation.
I think that might be the joke here. Is the Wilds of Eldraine food is all infested with rats. This has an infinite with Peregrine Took.
Correct.
Yes.
So if you're intentionally, power maxing or trying to go for an environment that has infinites, that's a pretty easy one to pull off. Outside of that, I think it's just a little bit too weak of a food payoff / token generator, given that the rats that it makes are not very good. And there's, are there better 3-mana cards that make tokens right now? Probably not. Like, it's in the, you put it up there. It's in the same vein as like the Skullport Merchant and the Lord Skitters is 3-mana, undersized bodies that make a thing. But it's not super strong. It's not, I don't even think this is really a good like food payoff if you're pushing food, because the payoff is just stuff that's really hard to do anything with. The rats they are some of the weaker tokens that you can make in Peasant.
Different color, obviously, and it doesn't spot you game object, but if you're in the like food space, I'd rather just have Quinnaku. Like, if you're probably playing green black if you're doing the heavy food stuff anyway. So just like, I'd rather have Quinna and just get 1/1s that can block.
The advantage of this card on that card and Took is that it spots you that token up front, which is a big deal. Yeah. So it's like it's a slightly better card on its own, and then a worse engine card, and the fact that it combos with Took, which to me is a more interesting card for the food lane, is just what kills it for me. But if you don't mind the infinite combo, or if this card speaks to you more than Took for those lanes, I think this is fine to run. But yeah, it's the rats are really bad. That's the main thing to understand, is the rats are not good cards.
All right, Kurt Crabane is next. This is 2 and a black, 1/1 bird horror with flying. When it enters the battlefield, amass orcs 2. The story of this card is you really wish those stat lines were reversed. You wish this was what's the March of the Machine?
Preening champion, yeah.
You wish this was like a Preening champion. Especially if you're in the sacrifice lane, you would rather sacrifice the body and have the bigger flyer on board than vice versa. This is like a begrudging playable in JDG Cube at this point, which I think we've got enough black 3s that we could just drop it for something else. But not a huge fan myself. I think it's serviceable. Like, it's not a D level card. It is still 3/3 stats, a little bit of evasion, 2 bodies. That is enough to get it up into C range, but not much higher than that. You did slot in B. I don't know if you're going to make an argument for B here.
Yeah, I think it's probably the very bottom of B, but it's not niche, it's not weak, it goes in every deck. It's just not exciting. It's not easy to synergize around, but it's also, of all the 3-mana make 2 objects cards on this list, I think it's the best one, and all of that to me means it's a B. It's a weak B, but it's a card that I'll never be surprised to see in anyone's cube. I run it still. It is mid. It's a mid card, but it doesn't need any help. It just does the thing. And a lot of these, if you look at the Cs, really all of these Cs, the problem with them is they kind of all need help in my mind. And Crabane doesn't. It's 2 objects for 3 mana. It's just not the most impressive rate.
Yeah, I have no comments.
Say the line, Bart. Okay. What is this card called? Great
Dark
Sword?
Knight's Greatsword.
Dark Knight's Grey Sword, 2 and a black, equipment with job select, so it creates the colorless hero token, and then attaches itself to it. The equipped creature gets +3/+0 and is a knight in addition to its other types. So 3 mana for a 4/1, basically. The equip cost is pay 3 life, and you can only activate that once each turn, but it does not cost any mana to do that.
This card is really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, really quickly, we talk a lot about job select equipment and why we like them so much. And the biggest difference between the vast majority of, living weapon style equipment, I should say, and this is that most of them are 2 mana. And there's just a big difference between the utility that you get from the 2 mana versions of these effects, where you're getting 2 objects for 2 mana versus 2 objects for 3 mana. Because at 2 mana, you're just much more likely you're much more willing to be able to sacrifice them. They're kind of just these things lying around. We have to invest 3 mana. In that play, it just the equation is a lot less in its favor. It's also, obviously on its own, it's creating this 4/1 that's just going to die, and then you really need other stuff in play, specifically lifelink creatures, for this to really make a lot of sense, because the equip ability is really punishing. So it's a cool card. There's a card coming out in Marvel Superheroes, a black creature that cares a lot about equipment. I can imagine if you're running this and you're running Black Mage's Rod, maybe you're also running that card. Like, there's a little mini lane forming there. So I don't think it's egregiously bad. It makes 2 objects. It's very good with Deep Cavern Bat and the other bat that has lifelink. But I think it's on its own. It's relatively not particularly efficient.
Yeah, it's also just a card that, when you pay 3 life, and if your opponent has the removal spell, this is going to feel worse than most of the time, even when you play mana for things. Like, the life loss here is immense. This is a lot of life.
Yeah, you can only do it once each turn, though.
That saves you from yourself. Yeah,
good. Sure.
Hey, if you're playing with Axis of Immortality, you can equip it all the way down. No, you can't. Because once you turn, darn.
Just give I know this is not an entirely fair comparison, but they both came out in the same set and cost the same mana. But compare this to Samurai's Katana, and it's just like, that's not. You're right. It's not fair. Yeah.
No, not at all. Okay, cornered by black mages. Also from Final Fantasy. This is 1 black sorcery. Target opponent sacrifices a creature of their choice. You create a 0/1 black wizard with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this token deals 1 damage to each opponent.
I played with this
wizards.
Yeah, it's basically Chupacabra. I played with this for a bit. It was so good in Final Fantasy. But there's just a big difference between retail and in our cubes, at least. There's, again, these make opponent sacrifice creature cards are much worse, and this is black. So people begged me to take the card out of the cube, and I have. I don't think it's that bad, though. I think sometimes you'll be on the play, you'll nab their tough cookie or whatever, their really strong 2-drop, and then you'll have this object in play that is quite valuable. We've talked multiple times now about the value of these pingers on non-creature spells. So I think the card's not bad, but ultimately there are spots where it will be very bad. So I don't think it can get to the B range.
Yeah. Edicts are bad more often than they're not bad.
In our environments. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
They have their moments where they feel amazing. And if they feel amazing and they're spotting you one of these little pingy dudes, it's really good. So yeah, C feels appropriate. Now, Danelius, you might owe the people an apology because you said earlier in this video that black has trouble. Black doesn't have a lot of themes.
Oh, right, my bad. Yeah,
that it can go for. But life gain is right here, and you can tell by all these wonderful life gain cards that we've talked about so far. Bloodthirsty Aerialist, 1 black 2/3 vampire rogue with flying. When you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Bloodthirsty Aerialist. And stay tuned for the Marvel Superheroes Peasant review, where Dan is going to try to talk up the green version of this as an S tier level card. So, this card's really bad unless you're specifically, pushing life gain as a black-white theme or something like that, in which case you know what you're doing, and we would recommend you don't do it, but some people want to do that, and feel free to do that if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and if you want to do that, just, again, limit the number of Doomblades where your whole strategy revolves around landing one of these cards, and it can just die. I think that's really not going to be particularly fun. But if you're in a low removal environment with heavy life gain synergies, then, I can understand it.
Yeah, this card can get really big really quickly, but, double black for a 2/3. It's a lot to ask to get this going, but I will say, once you've triggered it one time, so if you've got a Lunark veteran or something and play a Prosperous Innkeeper, when you resolve this, it's going to be a 3/4, and that's probably good enough to justify it. But I still think you should probably shy away from this particular synergy package.
Just compare it with Nighthawk. Nighthawk is good on its own, but it still has all the problems we were talking about. Aerialist has the problems that Nighthawk has, but it needs other stuff to happen. So.
Okay, banger here. Bleeding Edge, not to be confused with Iron Man Bleeding Edge. In case anyone was confused there, this is 1 black sorcery. Up to 1 target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. amass 2. This kills something. It's Ravenous Chupacabra.
I liked this better before we had Vengeful.
I'm shocked to see this played so little. Like, I mean,
really
look at where it is on the list. Like, look at all these cards that are played over Bleeding Edge. Like, Bleeding Edge to me is
really
like slam dunk A level or better. Yes, it's black. I hate black, but like for the effect, like, man, it's just Chupacabra. It's 3-mana Chupacabra. It's not as good as Rebel, but it's very, very strong.
Yeah, it's Chupacabra that feels really bad when your opponent plays like Glory Heathlinks, but you feel great when you nab a Nep or whatever. Which
you kill the thing that they need to crew the Glory Heathlinks with, you know.
Preliminary argument here: Jessica Jones does not die to Bleeding Edge, but a Nep does die to Bleeding Edge. Gotcha. Voracious Vermin, 2 and a black, 2/1 a rat. When it enters, you create bad rat token. Whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Voracious Vermin.
Yeah, just compare this with Dunlin Kerbane. This is my point of why Kerbane to me gets up to the B range. It's just a lot better than most of the other 3-mana make 2 object cards that black gets access to. If you like the words on Voracious Vermin, play Lord Skitter's Butcher. It's a much better card.
Yeah, 100%. Unscrupulous. That's all I know about that. Okay, there we go. Unscrupulous Contractor, 2 and a black, 3/2 Human Assassin. When it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. So very similar to the Fellstinger. The difference here is this one has plot for 2 and a black, so you can pay that cost, exile it, and then or exile it as a sorcery, and then play it for free on a later turn.
I would say the big advantage of plot is when it gave you some sort of discount over the card. So like Beastbonder Outcaster, I believe, only costs 2 to plot. Aloe Alchemist, I think, is like the same, but it's like a 2-drop. And then there's the Shark, I think, was 3. So like this one being the same cost means that the plot's just kind of like setting up for a future play to do nothing. Like it's just gonna do the same thing. Like just play Fellstinger.
Yeah, the plot's basically irrelevant on this. The only advantage this has on Stinger is that you know they can't do the trick where they kill this in response, but it doesn't have Death Touch. Death Touch is a really nice ability. So to me, it's just worse Fellstinger, kind of clearly.
Yeah, I think this is pretty clearly the worst of the trio. Whole of the Invasion. This is 2 and a black sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, discard it, and amass 1. So you could think about that as 3 mana 1/1 that Thal seizes your opponent. Where does this stack up next to Thoughtstalker Warlock?
It's worse. It's much, much worse. I am coming up on this card though. Like we've been talking a lot in recent reviews and when we've been on our calls doing these cube drafts, that giving black access to more hand disruption would be really, really nice to give it more game against the green go over the top decks. Like being able to nab your opponent's Social or their Godma or whatever before it comes down and like kills you before you can remove it. Or in the case of Social, black just like can't really remove it at all. Giving black more access to these effects in my mind is something I really want to do. I don't know if Toll is good enough. It was really good in its format. I played it a bit in Cube where it in the before times it seemed much worse. But again, those were in environments where green over the top stuff wasn't nearly as strong as it is now. Like Nab Everything Pizza from Elf or Snarl Song or whatever. Like these cards that are turning into real menaces in the format. Like I think this specific card honestly might be one of the things we need to look to again. As a way to give black more fight in these matchups. But you draw it at the top, and it's just so bad so much of the time. It's not going to be amazing in mid-range matchups. It's really bad against aggro, so I don't love the card, but it might be a necessary evil.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. It feels like playing like slower decks into these Glacier Godmaw Snarl Song piles is basically impossible unless you have counter magic. So having some discard that could help you get over that hump might be something we want to look at.
Brings to mind Render Silent from the most recent limited set, which ended up being an absolute banger. But that's a gold card, more expensive, grows something that's in board, and then what is the other one? Torment of Golem as well.
Yeah, that's 4 mana. I think it's harder to justify it for. Yeah.
Yeah. Which these cards have all been really good in their respective retail formats, which all have been kind of like big game formats too, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and for a lot of the same reasons we're mentioning here, right? Is your opponent's going to be playing slower decks. They've got bigger, more powerful cards into the later portions of the game. So having cards that, contribute to your board, however small that may be, they do contribute to your board, and then also, let you kind of disrupt your opponent's end game.
Generally speaking, I like I strongly prefer the versions of these effects that are kind of niche that bring creatures along with them compared to just like straight hand disruption that costs 1 or 2 mana that are total dead draws when you draw them off the top sometimes. This is just less often totally dead, and just, chupacabras are good. Creatures with ETBs are, just view this as a creature with an ETB. It's a small creature, but the ETB can be backbreaking, at least in some matchups. To me, it's minimally a really strong sideboard card. I don't know how often it would get main deck if we brought it back, but I'm much more interested in this card than I was, say, 6 months ago.
Yeah, unlike a lot of the other Amass cards, I do actually think this one is also better when you've already got an army in play and you can just make that army into a bigger, better attacker, just because the 1/1's going to be fairly anemic most of the time.
Well, I guess if that's the question, just to bring up a card that does that all the time, there's a card from TDM that was 3 mana, Thoughtseize your opponent, put a +1 counter on a creature you control. Like, what would your thought on that be? Because that's what you just described, but it always does that.
Yeah, but I think like that would be the optimal thing, is putting the +1 counter on your army. But like, if I don't have a creature in play, I want my 1/1. Like, yeah,
sure. I think sometimes you'd rather have the 1/1 too. I feel like, it's not always the case that a +1/+1 counter is going to be better. It's just that sometimes enabling an attack the turn you cast this can be quite impactful. Often because you're like stripping their ability to deal with your army on this card. Like you take the removal spell, and now you want a bigger army to be attacking them.
Yeah, and turns your orc army into a zombie, by the way. Seer of Stolen Sight. This was like a set card, right? Booster. Yeah, this was a set booster card from March of the Machine, so it wasn't actually in the limited format. It's 2 and a black, 2/3 Phyrexian Warlock with Menace. Whenever one or more artifacts and or creatures you control are put into a graveyard from the battlefield, surveil 1. So you had originally made the point before, Danelius, or you had compared this directly to the Caesorian Voidborn, the Albed Salvagers, as like a different kind of payoff, but possibly a better payoff, given the menace on the body, and like Surveillance is pretty good, and those cards aren't performing very well. Do you still have those same thoughts?
Yeah. Basically, I just think that it's possible that the Surveil one is more value oriented, and the drain stuff on Voidborn and Salvagers, I think, ultimately just doesn't end up mattering that much because the creatures you're playing are undersized. So at least Seer helps you dig towards your card and board advantageous plays, whereas Salvagers and Voidborn really need you to kind of already be in the position where you're winning the game off of those drains. So it's a different card. I think it goes in a very similar lane, and it's possible that I prefer them to both. But that being said, again, I still think I might just prefer Bastion to all of these because it's 2 objects as opposed to just the 1. If Seer is really good, it's just going to die. And that's part of the problem, I think, with Salvagers and Voidborn is you're playing them in these decks with a bunch of fodder. You play this card, it's like, okay, that's the card that I put my removal spell at, and Seer has the same issue.
Yeah, you just haven't had to use your removal on any of the creatures that they played because they're all janky 1/1s.
Yep.
Yeah. I can't say I've thought about that card too much. Was this Raffine's Silencer, right?
So this is Dan's invitational card or pet card or whatever.
Yeah, I'll read this one because it's my fault that people have been forced to play with this card in Peasant. So it's Fiend Silencer is 2 and a black for a 1/1. It's a human assassin. When it enters the battlefield, you connive, so you can draw discard, and if you discard it on land, then it gets a +1 counter. And then it says when it dies, target creature an opponent controls gets -X until end of turn, where X is Fiend Silencer's power. So the ideal scenario with this is you play your Mystic or your Messenger on turn 2. You cast this on turn 3, triggering your stuff that's already in play. You get a little loot off. You put a counter on it, and now it trades off with your opponent's 2/2 and kills another 2/2. And like that all combined is incredible. Like that output is all fantastic. The issue is, number one, you don't always want to discard an on land, so it's often sometimes it's just a 1/1. You don't you're not guaranteed to get synergy off of that connive. You're just you're hoping for it, and it's a death trigger. And as we've talked about many times, death triggers are just so much worse than ETB triggers or leaves triggers or whatever else. Like there's lots of ways to deal with this card where you're just not getting that trigger at all. And I just seen it in play enough where it's been mid that I can't give it the B rating that I used to give it automatically. It was really good in its format, S&C, but yeah, I've seen it enough in play where it's been quite anemic that I think I can't go higher than C any longer. I have taken it out of my cube after much gnashing of teeth from my drafters. But I still like the card a lot. I think there's synergy. I like it in the blue-black draw 2 space. It can be quite annoying on board. When you have multiple 2/2s in play, this just stonewalls their whole team. So that can be nice, but yeah, there are board states where it's awful.
No notes. Popular Egotist, 2 and a black, 3/2 human rogue, 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature or enchantment. It gains indestructible until end of turn and tap it. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, target opponent loses 1 life and gain 1 life. Strictly better Mayhem Devil. Not really. I want to point out something I just noticed on this real quick. If you look up, everybody at home, please stop what you're doing, pause the video and do this. Look up the card Popular Egotist on Scryfall, and then look up the card from Secrets of Strixhaven, Social Snub. And it looks like the same exact character going through like a character arc of like they were they were snubbed at the cafeteria table and now they're like sacrificing their classmates to whatever's going on in the background. Anyway,
giving it a Dustborn or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, creature or enchantment is a knock against this. Obviously it's not Mayhem Devil; it only triggers on your stuff. It is cool that you get a drain off of your fetch lands and all sorts of other stuff that you could be sacrificing, but this is a pretty weak sack outlet. All be told. I mean, 3 mana, 3/2 is not super impressive, so there's a lot working against this here, even if the upside is kind of interesting once like engines get rolling.
Yeah, I mean, this card was, if I recall correctly, quite aggressively mediocre even in its retail set.
I think so.
Yeah, if you're, I think the biggest problem is just if you're sacrificing board presence, you need some sort of advantage from that, like card advantage, board advantage, something, not just the drain. Especially if you're having to activate this card, like spending 2 mana and not getting anything other than a drain off of it, I think it's just too much to ask. But pair this with a lot of fetch lands, I can at least see the dream. But it's 3 mana 3/2. It doesn't make cardboard, doesn't draw cards.
Yeah. Would you be more interested if it sacked, even if it sacked artifacts instead of enchantments? I still think the whole package doesn't really come together here.
Yeah, hard to imagine.
Yeah. All right. Who do we have next here? We have Jumble Bones. Gotta look this one up for sure. Okay, Ozok, the Clattering King. This is a pretty obscure jumpstart card. It's 2 and a black. 3/2 legendary skeleton noble. It can't block, and when Ozox dies, you create Jumble Bones, a legendary 2/1 black skeleton creature token with this creature can't block, and when this creature leaves the battlefield, return target card named Ozox the Clattering King from your graveyard to your hand. So 3 mana 3/2 can't block. When it dies, you make a 2/1 that can't block, but when that dies, you get this thing back from your graveyard, and Ozox and Jumble Bones ostensibly loop back and forth over the course of like a 20 turn game or something like that. But they can't block, so this is pure sack fodder, or I don't know, you're pushing black aggro, but this isn't like a impressively aggressive card. So I don't really see the dream, other than the only reason I can think you really want to play this card is you want to say Jumble Bones, or you have like a custom Jumble Bones token that you really just want to like show people.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, it's a stream of value, but it's also taxing you 3 mana every time, right? Because it doesn't return. You said it returns your hand, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't infinite sack.
Yeah. I mean, if like either portion of this could block, like especially if the 3/2 could block, I think you would be kind of cooking here. But as it is, I mean, just can't block is one of the worst lines of text you can put on a Magic card.
Potential infinites here at some point, or with multiple other cards in play. But again, we wouldn't even really recommend that play pattern. I'm willing to give this like a responsibility D, just to, like, don't put can't block cards in your cube. They're not fun to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Three copies of Pitiless Plunderer and a free sack outlet.
There you go.
Infinite,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
It shows up in some people's cubes though. Like I see a compelling design here, but I'm not really. The overall package just feels like you're gonna die if you try to do anything like
I think
this.
the people playing with it haven't internalized how bad Can't Block is. Can't Block is just really, really bad.
Yeah. This one's not too dissimilar. Infernal Vessel is 2 and a black for a 2/1, and when it dies, if it wasn't a demon, you return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with 2+1/+1 counters on it. It's a demon in addition to its other types. Okay, so that I thought this like died into a 4/3 token is how I kind of internalized it, but it's a 3 mana 2/1 that dies and comes back as a 4/3.
Yeah, I think super undersized, has to die specifically. Again, we've talked about there are ways of dealing with creatures that have nothing to do with death. This can't attack, so you're already. I mean, it can, I guess, but they're not going to block, or they don't need to block. It's not particularly impressive in that way. So it's just a very narrow card, and even in that narrow lane, there are ways of getting around it pretty easily. So not particularly compelling to me. I think if you like this general text, play with Wriggling Grub or other 2 or 3 mana effects that are guaranteed to give you objects, even like Weaponcraft Enthusiast. I think that's going to play out better.
And if you're really into the idea of like your cultist turning into a giant demon, I think Archfiend's Vessel is a much more compelling card to play in that spot.
It only costs 1 mana.
Yep. 1 mana for a 5/5 a lot of the time. Okay, Gurgling Anointer is up next. This is 2 and a black, 1/3 flyer, Phyrexian Horror. When you draw your second card each turn, put a +1 counter on it. When it dies, return another target creature with mana value less than or equal to Gurgling Anointer's power from the graveyard to the battlefield. So this starts off 3 mana, 1/3 flyer that dies into a 1-drop from your graveyard, but you can scale it up a little bit with some extra cards.
See, this is how I know we're getting good at this, is I just teed you up for the Archfiend's Vessel combo piece.
Oh, look at that combo. Check that out, boys.
Yeah, I'm struggling on this card to imagine the lane where we want it. I guess for a lot of these cards, it's like if you're in an environment without much bounce or exile, or bounce or exile, I guess is the main, or passivisms even too can deal with this effect, I guess, if that's a thing that you're running. So if you're playing in a cube where
with no
destruction,
removal.
where destruction is the main thing going on, then maybe I can envision this. But it's small, it needs a lot of other stuff happening, and it needs to not get blown out with bounce or exile. And to me, that's a D.
Yeah, I mean, I think the card here has some potential, but yeah, it's just hard to see the environment where we're going to realize this.
Yeah, I mean, clear potential there, right? It's a 3-drop that could become a 3/5 flyer without like too much work, and then die into a 3-drop. But that's the ceiling of the card, and a lot of times it's just going to be a 1/3 that dies to anything. So.
Or just bounce that you put 2 counters on it and they bounce it, and you're like, that's quite sad.
Yeah. Okay, Graveblade Marauder, which I think was the card we capped off with last time we did this, so a little bit higher than some of the other things here. I do want to remind my co-hosts that we're being positive. We're making a conscious effort to be positive here. 2 and a black, 1/4 Death Touch. It's a human warrior. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. I think this was originally a rare back in Magic Origins. Got bumped down to uncommon a couple times.
Yeah,
very cool card.
I don't
this is
really see the reason here. Cool card, but what's the reason? Like, why are you doing this? Is this really a graveyard payoff, or like, is this the gorging? Is this why you're playing Gorging Vulture or whatever?
I think the way that some people design cubes, if you listen to people like Lucky Paper Radio, they would look at this card and they might build a whole cube around it, where it's like, okay, I want to have plenty of ways to self-mill, and I want ways of getting my cheap creatures through, so like unblockability, of some type, and then the cube kind of gets created around effects like this because they're so interesting and novel. The problem is, again, for the kinds of cubes that we're building, where we're looking to get a fair amount of power out of cards. We have a lot of cards that just do the thing on their own, and they do it really well, really efficiently. Look at the top cards in this list. This asks just so much of you. And even with everything going right, there's still ways of just getting around it quite easily, like just a Doomblade. So in my mind, these are the kinds of cards that are exciting to read. And I think the way that Court of Calls talks about it is some people are numbers cards and some people are words cards. There's a lot of words on it that are fun, and some people get really excited about that. I'm much more into numbers. The numbers on this are quite poor. So for me, I'm not interesting to me.
I mean, even compared to some of the other sections, like we've allotted more work to be done in the top of this cube tier list, right? Like the Morbid Opportunist, Thoughtstalker Warlock, and Vengeful Rebel all ask something out of you, but the ask is like astronomically smaller than what this card is asking of you, which is like evasion plus a million cards in your graveyard. They've got to be creatures too, right? They can't just be. This isn't a sin. It's got to be actual creatures.
Yep.
So
Gotta be creatures.
Really, really hard to see all of that coming together, but it is a nifty card.
Yeah, and Death Touch does solve the issue that I have with One Force, where a lot of creatures can just attack past it and give you your triggers and stuff like that. But not by so much. Like the upside here is just, I'm not really seeing it. It's harder to get creatures in your graveyard than you would think.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Okay, Vault Plunderer. This is 2 and a black, 3/1 human rogue. When it enters target player, draws a card and loses a life, commits a crime. This is a Phyrexian Rager adjacent, and Danielius has appropriately put it adjacent to Phyrexian Rager for that reason.
Yeah, I don't even know which one of these I prefer. Like 1 toughness is rough, but 3 power is nice, and the fact that you can maybe zap your opponent for lethal is kind of funny. But
I feel big brain when I sign in blood people, but you're never pinging them. You never get them with the wand.
Yeah, it seems unlikely, and they're just so small.
Yeah.
Yep. Siege Rhino, aka Vampire Spawn, 2 and a black, 2/3 vampire. When it enters, each opponent loses 2 life. You gain 2 life. Simple and clean.
That's the way that you're making me feel tonight.
That's it.
Yeah,
Copyright claim.
The original 17 lands banger.
Yeah, and just compare it with Albed Salvagers, right? Vampire Spawn says, hey, you already got 2 things to leave the battlefield just by casting it and having it enter the battle. It's like, you kind of have to do this. It's like, it's just better in my mind than all these cards. It's just not as fun. It's not like the cube equity argument isn't as strong for this card as these others, but I think it is just better.
It's weird on power level. I'm like, I kind of want to stick this in B tier because I think this is a totally cubable card. I'm just struggling to think like, when are we actually going to do that? Also, like, the fact that this card is completely outclassed by a 1-drop is a little bit concerning, but, like, it is a good card. This is still, like...
He's like, Okiba Reckon Raid is the card he's referring to there, and yes, I would agree that is a much better card than this. But yeah, to me, this is more an interesting conversation around, like, how do you want to build your cube? Do you want to build it with cards that just tend to work on their own, or do you want to focus on cards that really need other stuff to get them to work? If so, then this is definitely below all these other cards, but I think just as a card, it is definitely better.
Sweet Tooth Witch is 2 and a black, 3/2 human warlock. When it enters, make a food, and you can pay 2 mana, sacrifice a food, and have target player lose 2 life. Immediate comparison to the Confectioner. It seems like a worse payoff to me than the Confectioner, and it's like 3/2 is worse than 2/3 for 3.
Oh, but it doesn't go infinite with Peregrine Took. So I mean, I think 3/2 I probably like a little more than 2/3, but they're close. But either way, it doesn't combo with Took, and so you could play this in a food space, and it wouldn't be embarrassing. Like, of all the black as a color doesn't actually get nearly as much like ETB make a food cards as green does. It has removal spells now like Savor, and then it gets like the pots that do it, like the 3-mana artifact. There's a couple of those that do that. So that's how black gets its food. If you want to have a little bit more food creation, I think Sweet Tooth Witch is fine.
Like in the last episode where Danelius lied about the green 3-mana 3/2 that made a food. This actually is a 3-mana 3/2 that makes a food.
What did I lie about?
What was the one? What was
the wolf?
True. I suppose that's
with
true.
the adventure on it, yeah.
I do think that's a better card, honestly.
I mean, I don't disagree that it's probably a better card, but this is actually what we claimed that card was, which is a 3-mana 3/2.
It's not great.
Yeah. No, nothing here is exciting, but 3-mana card makes a game object, like whatever.
Jesus, I just typed in Swarm. I thought I was going to get to this card by typing in Swarm on Scryfall. There's
3 million?
57 cards. But this is the Swarm. He's legendary. And good news, we don't even have to call it.
Oh, is this Dr. Bees?
What's this? A handsome family picnic woefully underpopulated by bees? A large influx of bees ought to put a stop to that.
We don't have to call it Wekdu Midnight Hunter anymore because it's being reskinned. This actually might be a downgrade. Swarm Being of Bees is 2 and a black, 2/2. Legendary insect villain with flash, flying, and mayhem for a single black mana. So if you discard it, that same turn you can pay black to cast it from your graveyard. And since this one has flash, it actually gets around the sorcery restriction on a lot of mayhem cards. I want to say there is a very similar madness card, like
Kitchen
an imp or
something
like that.
Imp, yeah. Kitchen Imp is not the name of that card, I don't think, but yeah.
I mean, 3 mana 2/2 flash, terrible. Flying Windrake with flash, terrible. But if you can mayhem it, there's actually some real upside to it. So this to me is a like tertiary payoff for doing discard stuff. Still not compelling enough to make me, want to play over some of the better discard payoffs. But you could certainly do worse than getting basically like a free 2/2 flyer if you're doing discard shenanigans, which there's a lot of naturally. So this might just work in a lot of cubes. But I think you really got to be pushing that theme. You got to be pushing the madness mayhem theme, which I know a lot of people like. That is a archetype that people really enjoy playing with.
Yeah, we can just never cast this face up, right? Like if you're playing this as a black holy cow or whatever, it's just that's so awful. So you've got to get over the hump, which is like the problem most of these Madness adjacent Mayhem cards struggle with. Is like outside of like Fiery Temper, which is overcosted but still manageable, and like maybe Gissa's Bidding. Just they're all so unreasonably bad for the mana value.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to convince Teld and Tim to maybe do some content around making a cube with all these like kind of niche archetypes that we talk about, just to see what that's even like. I can definitely imagine this in a cube that's pushing, discard madness, whatever, as a main theme in Grixis. The cards that those decks are concerned with the most are, the really strong mayhem cards. Is this really strong? Maybe not, but like, I don't know, free 2/2 flyer on your opponent's turn could be good. So yeah, to me, in that lane, in that cube, I can see this. It's just definitely not good enough for our environments. Or it's too narrow, I guess is how I put it.
Not at all. Sorry, Tel, do you have another point there?
What's this? An overabundance of bees in the workplace? My briefcase full of bees ought to put a stop to that. The situation has only been made worse with the addition of yet more bees.
Just to, like, if you're in that weirder space, maybe you're also playing, like, we talked about Heroic and some of these cards that buff up cards. This is, like, a good place in a lower power removal environment to stack up some counters after you flash it in, which is, like, nifty. It's neat. This is cool.
Yeah.
Also,
it was fun to play with in Spider-Man.
It was good. It was good in Spider-Man. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's a villain for your cool little active treason or whatever.
Villain tribal.
Silver Smoke Ghoul, 2 and a black, 3/1 zombie vampire. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, return Silver Smoked Ghoul from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. You can also pay 1 and a black, sacrifice the ghoul, and draw a card.
3 or more is such a bummer. It's such a bummer on 3 or more.
Yeah, I do like bumping this up a little bit to see, because there's so much. This is like a secondary food payoff where if you're gaining 3 life or you're doing the life gain thing or whatever, like you actually do just get a free body by having this in your graveyard. The whole cycle is like very fiddly of paying 3 mana to cast this and then 2 mana to sacrifice it and then 2 mana to sacrifice your food and get this back. But turning a food into a 3/1, gaining the life and potentially letting that cantrip into something else is not nothing. It's just not it's not a very powerful thing at the end of the day when you're actually going through the loops.
Yeah, I just don't ever want to spend 3 mana on this. I want to discard it or mill over it. But if you're doing that, and then I guess you activate a food, then sure.
Everything about this is free. We just freely get in the graveyard and then freely trigger it. Yeah, this is a rock solid card.
Sure, yep.
Okay, Poisoner's Apprentice. This is like Arnine, where last time we looked at it, we hadn't played with it yet. In fact, I think it was like spoiled the day that we were doing the original recording, so now we have a little bit more context here. It's 2 and a black, 2/2 Orc Warlock. It has Infusion. When this creature enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -4/-4 until end of turn if you've gained life this turn.
Yeah, kind of fascinating that this wasn't a busted card in SOS. Like, it was good, but it wasn't like, I think a lot of people pre-format were anticipating this being like Black's best non-rare, for instance, and it definitely wasn't. And part of that is green-black being bad, but even in green-black, it wasn't, the best black non-rare, even in that archetype. So, but yes, theoretically, in your own cube, could be pushing life gain hard enough where this is a really good payoff, but you need to be pushing life gain a lot.
Yeah, this card really wants to be playing with like Prosperous Innkeeper and the Elven
Virulent Emissary.
Yeah, like that, and Lunart Veterans and stuff. And like, if you can do that, it's just free. This card is really powerful. Like, we look at Vengeful Rebel. It's like, if this card is like a Vengeful Rebel that kills something, it's great. It's just, I think in most cubes, that's a much harder ask than what Vengeful Rebel's offering. Yeah, I mean, green-black being terrible. I think another thing that SOS ended up being about getting really far underneath your opponent or just going so far over the top that nothing mattered. And this is in that exact mid-range, like, mirror match kind of card that I really like these designs because it's really good in these, like, grindy mirror matches or, like, mid-range mirrors, but it's not going over the top and it's not a good aggro card. So, like, it doesn't have a home in SOS.
Yes, but white, red, and white, black were heavily played and very good. And I think in theory, this card is incredible in that matchup. I think what the stats reveal is it just isn't free to get the life gain off of this. And even in your cube, like even in your cube deck where you have Emissary and Innkeeper and Lunarch Veteran, you have like 3 effects that trigger this. You still have the problem of needing to have that card in play first and survive before, like, and you put this on the stack and they don't go like, okay, in response, I kill your life gain creature. So I think you need a lot. I think you need more than just a few Soul Sister effects for this to be good enough. I think you need like 8+ cards in your deck that are gaining life kind of incidentally. And if you have that, then yeah, this card's going to be awesome.
Or non-creatures that like do the life gain every turn, like Abiding Grace and stuff like that. Yeah, I actually think this card is just terrible. I think it's a C. Well, in SOS, I thought it was terrible because it relied so much on the Boggart, and if your opponent Tome Blasted the Boggart, suddenly this card didn't work. Like it was so reliant on the Soul Sister being in play, and that's how I think it is for Cube. And like the comparison to Vengeful Rebel is almost laughable. Like the only upside here is you kill X4s instead of X3s, and X3/3 is gonna kill majority of what this kills anyway, and that card just works. This one requires you to be in a way more niche strategy and has a smaller body too. If you sometimes you do have to walk of shame, run out your dumb Vengeful Rebel. At least it's a 3-power dude. This is I think this card is really bad.
I have never walk of shame to Vengeful Rebels. To be fair,
you can't just
I have
concede.
I have when I had recursion in my hand and no way to enable this, so I traded off the Rebel and then reanimated it to get the effect. But anyway,
my only comparison was that the effects are similar, but yeah, Vengeful Rebel is obviously much stronger because it triggers off a stiff breeze. This card requires quite a bit of work from you.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Who do we have next? Oh, No Way Out. Okay. This is 2 and a black sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards. You make a decayed zombie. So the 2/2s that can't block, and they sacrifice when they attack.
More like
I want to give this
D tier, right? Right.
I want to give this a C because I think in this cube that I'm trying to get y'all to make, a cube where spell slinging matters a lot. I think this card is actually quite good. Any spell that makes an object and it gives you advantage. This is a potential 3-for-1 kind of ish a little bit. But not for our environments because we have no desire at all to be playing with instants and sorceries. We don't really have any way to synergize around that. But if you are, I think this is like a pretty solid, interesting effect for black to be running. There's not any mind rots that are really worth running except for this one in my mind. It's like the best mind rot that gets to like bottom of C for me.
I won't argue with that. I don't know that I'm compelled to play it necessarily, but I think
that's bottom of C. Yeah.
Yeah. 3 mana 2/2 that makes your opponent discard 2 cards is not nothing for sure.
Sure.
Markov Baron. I have a little gripe with this card. Markov Baron is 2 and a black 2/2 Vampire Noble with Convoke, Lifelink. Other vampires you control get +1/+1 and Madness for 2 and a black. And you can convoke the Madness there, which is kind of a cool design. I like the design of this card. If you're doing vampires, go for it. My only complaint, and I'll make this brief, is that this was a Aftermath, March of the Machine Aftermath card, which was like supposed to check in on all these different characters and worlds. And somehow we had room for this, where it's just like, vampires are here. That's what you needed to know. And the aftermath of everything that happened in March of the Machine, one of the 60 cards to make it in this set was just a generic vampire.
Well, you had to know that House Markov still stands, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's vampires. There's a lot of dinosaurs in that set, too, for some reason. But
the dinosaurs did not go extinct.
Yeah. Are you doing vampire? Like, this is just a check mark card, very similar to actually better than the Liliana's devotee. If you're doing vampires, this card is probably pretty good for them.
Partially because a lot of the vampire, like Vampire Epicure or whatever, it's like there's vampires that already are playing around in the discard space. Like if you're doing a Madness thing, you're probably going to be playing multiple vampires in that lane, though it does kind of stink that the new really good Madness card we got of Swarm is not a vampire. So maybe I could imagine this actually not even playing out particularly well there, but there's so many words on this card. It's like I feel like a C is appropriate just given the word bloat on this. There's a lot of things you can do with it.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. It's a cool card too. Again, my boy, Hour of Promise, straight to D tier. Wait, no, Hour of Victory, right?
Yep.
It's a 3-mana 2/2, Tim.
2 objects.
Yeah,
two objects.
but it's so cool. Hour of Victory is 2 and a black enchantment with Start Your Engines. Not going to read that here. When this enchantment enters, you create a 2/2 black zombie, and at max speed, you can pay 1 and a black and sacrifice it to search your library for a card, put in your hand, and shuffle. Yeah, the card plays out bad. I do really like the design of it, but This is not as bad as Daybound, Nightbound, but you don't need to make people track speed for like one card. 3 mana 2/2 is way too weak. You're not guaranteed to get the tutor, and it's questionable like how good a demonic tutor even really is. Like what the ceiling on a demonic tutor is. It's probably good if it's like almost free, but this is not free. You're taking a hit on the front end. If this made like a 3/3 zombie, then we could talk. Like if it was just an on-rate creature and then maybe gave you a demonic tutor later on down the line, we could talk about it. But 3 mana 2/2 is unacceptable for something that then won't even work for at least 3 turns later and might not even work then. And even then is questionable like how good the payoff is. So yeah, like it's a D, but it's like a B minus in my heart.
Yeah, it awkwardly puts you behind on board so that you're less likely to be able to trigger it. Like you're just playing so little on stats. Like when are we getting aggressive with this card?
Either this needed to be 2 mana card, or needed to make a 3/3, or it just needed to give you the demonic tutor effect for free without speed. I think if it did that final thing, even then, I still think it would be like a C. It would just be like fine, because yes, I think ultimately that ability is like it's better than a Clue's ability, but it's not like a ton better than a Clue's ability. It's like a better by a small amount. It's still just +1 card. So yeah, I think it's quite weak.
I'm very sad to hear you say that. Yeah, Gray salad here is Scryfall won't even pull up the card. It doesn't exist. This is a 4/1 for 2 and a black. And I can't read.
Okay,
I don't know what the card. What does the card do?
It has an adventure. First of all, it's a frog horror, so you can sack it to your Quinaku to give it plus.
Oh, it does have use.
+1 counter. Yeah. Its adventure is example decay entropic decay, and it says mill 4 cards. That's it. And then the ability on the card is actually kind of exciting. It says as long as there are 4 or more creature cards in your graveyard, which good luck. Then it gains Menace and Death Touch. So
if it was, you milled 4 creatures off of the adventure. Right. That's what happens, right?
All right. So if it was just 3 mana 4/1 Menace Death Touch, I would have no interest in it at all. So then it isn't that, because you need to have the creatures in the yard, and then the additional value you're getting is getting to spend 2 mana before you play this creature to mill 4 cards. No thanks.
Yeah, I'm gonna love like you doing this adventure. You set up your creature, you play it, and then your opponent smirks and casts Life into Shiro.
I can hardly eat this pizza with all this sauce. There's so much sauce on this card. No. Okay. There's my one negativity for the at the end of the episode. Y'all drop off after 16 minutes. I've seen the analytics. You're not here for Gray Salad. Completed. Hey, we get to end on something that's not a complete dud though. Completed Huntmaster is 2 and a black, 2/3 Phyrexian Elf Warrior. You can pay 1, tap it, and sacrifice another creature or artifact to incubate 3, which are the Phyrexian tokens that come in with 3 +1/+1 counters. You can pay 2 mana to transform them and turn them into actual 3/3s. Teld had a long lasting relationship with the Completed Huntmaster here.
Yeah, I mean, I played it in a bunch of decks for a while after Mom came out, and I was always pretty impressed with it. Like, it is slow, it is fragile, but it's a good conversion thing for turning, like, random junk into 3/3s. It doesn't spot you, the mana, like, of turning those incubators into actual creatures is not free. But, the conversion on this, being able to, like, turn random things into 3/3s is pretty good. Like, I'm not going to pretend it's the best card ever or anything, but it does a job. It has a job. It's better than a lot of these Ds.
Yeah, I'm giving it the Teld respectful C-. I do think it's more like a D, but if you want to play with this, to me, the key is to not be using it to upgrade your 1/1s into 3/3s for a bunch of mana and tapping this card. You want to be using it with food. Like, if you're turning your food into 3/3s in like a really grindy matchup where this isn't the only card that's going to eat a removal spell, then I can at least see the utility there. But if your plan is to sacrifice creatures to then turn them into bigger creatures, I think that's not a great plan.
This is also one of those cards that interacts favorably with Quina, right? Because the replacement effect. This makes 4/4
Yeah, you get
right?
the 3 counters on the frogs too. Yeah.
Yep.
Which I guess that's true of all incubate cards.
Yep.
Which is a super cool interaction there. Yeah, this is like the ultimate grind card. Like, need to untap, has tap ability, needs sacrifice fodder,
needs mana,
costs mana that turns into thing that needs mana to turn into thing. Like, super grind, but
game, yeah.
Yeah, but cool when it all comes together. So I'm not going to knock it too hard. Okay, let's recap there. I guess my first question is: does Morbid Opportunist push up into S rank with these other two cards, or is like A plus the appropriate spot for that?
I think A plus is appropriate. These other two cards are just their output is incredible and consistent.
Yeah, I'm always taking these two in S tier over everything else here, so I think that it makes sense to put them there. I generally think, I'm definitely taking everything in A tier, below or above everything in B tier. I think there's an argument about whether or not Feller's Faithful and Felstinger should, or even Cabrain should even be in B tier, and Toll the Invasion. That's a little bit more speculative, to be honest. So I think a lot of these Bs are kind of speculative. I think it might be appropriate to move some of this B stuff down to C and move some of the C stuff down to D, but you got to play with some black 3-drops. Black is in a much better space for its 3-drops for smaller environments. I'll say that. If you've got a 360, you're not that sad about the black 3-drop options currently. The larger your cube gets, it gets a little bit sadder, but I still am happy enough with cards like Stinger and Faithful, for the moment at least. Though they're starting to become quickly outclassed. If you think about the green 3-drop and red 3-drop episodes, there were some really amazing cards even at the B level in those tier lists, and I don't really think that Stinger and Faithful are at the B level for other colors, but for black, I do think these kind of outclass the other options.
Yeah. I wonder if we should have thrown a couple of the Marvel cards on here, but by the time you're listening to this, if you're curious of our thoughts on like the black 3-drops from Marvel, the Marvel Peasant episode should be coming out like within a week's span. So the Ronin and the 3/2 that can make a 2/1 menace with 2 creatures in your graveyard. There might be some other ones I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but I guess my story here is there's just not a lot of compelling black 3-drops. Like even in the C range, I think most of them are just niche or underperformers, or maybe even just like bad, barring like very specific peasant cube structures. So
even like 4 of the 5 cards that are up in the top 2 tiers there are just interactive pieces, right? They're just creatures that have some sort of interaction stapled to them.
Yeah, there's not a lot of ways for
That does make for, the best peasant cards, which I do wonder if we go back and look at all A's and all S's, like how many of them are just like 2-for-1s that affect the board, like kill a creature.
Absolutely, those are the best cards. I think that the big problem that black has into these kind of green over the top decks is that if all you're doing is kind of like small ball 2-for-1s, is like you were saying before, Teld, it's like the green has the ability to now go way over the top of that with some cards. So that's why, even though these are, in my mind, S's and A's, they still can be in a matchup where they won't feel like cards that are winning you the game. Whereas some of the green and red cards, they just always feel like they're winning you the game if they work out. So that's kind of the downside of this stuff, even though I think these are still very strong cards that I'm very happy to take first or very early into drafts. It's just black is not as strong as it was, because before black could never lose to green, and now it definitely can.
Yeah, I mean, the last night kind of put it a really good in perspective for me, where we were playing this, like, I was playing like green white, and it was like this small ball mid-range deck, and you were playing like everything pizza soup based out of green black, and like, we were playing to the board. I've got like a Mighty Mutanimals in play. I do this big combo play and like hit you for 14 damage or something. I have a big board, and then you're like, oh, that's cool. Anyways, here's a Glacier Golf Ball, and it's just like, all right, everything gets like +2/+2 vigilance, haste, and like ship 47 at you.
Yeah. Yep. Black is much more, generally speaking, going to be a lot better in smaller games if you look at all the cards at the top here. And that's honestly one of the reasons why the Aristocrat plan to me is not as compelling as it once was. I think black is just way better when there's not a lot of stuff in play, as opposed to there being a bunch of stuff in play. And black also isn't great at creating objects. Like, it kind of needs white, especially in my mind, to be flooding the board with stuff so that a lot of these Aristocrat cards even work. So yeah, black's in a very interesting spot in the cube right now. For a long time, black was the best color in my cube by like a huge amount because of cards like Nightclubber. And I think the situation has changed dramatically with the kind of shift in the meta that we've seen towards more grindy decks.
Yeah, I mean, also, if you look, like, one of these cards has been printed in the last, like, 2 years, right?
Oh, it's a huge problem. The black has in general. Black has just not been getting great cards lately. It's like, it's kind of shocking how little black has gotten in the last, like, 18 months.
Yeah, this is the opposite of the greens episode, right? In the greens, when we talked about how, like, every single good green card, it was basically printed in the last 2 years. And for black, it's a much, much smaller portion of those cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, at least that's the dynamic that I would like to see, is the historically best color and the historically worst color kind of like flip-flopping a little bit. But, yeah, obviously you would like them to meet in the middle. I think Danelius did a search of cards from 2026 that you had added, and the hunt was the only black card from the entire year so far.
Yeah, I think for 2025 and 2026, black has just gotten an incredibly small number of cards.
Yeah. And I don't think that's changing with Marvel, by the way, but we shall see. That does put a bow on 3-drop creatures for us. So I think the plan is 1-drops next, which is going to be way more interesting for some colors than others. And barring that, I don't know if we're going to go 4-drops and like continue working up mana value chain or not. We'll talk about that. To the listener, we would like to hear what you're interested in as well, especially if it's, something that we can do as part of a series and come back to across all the colors, removal spells, utility lands, whatever. We will continue to do this, and we are also doing the guilds. I think we're halfway done with the guilds, and we still got the other half to hit as well, so that'll be continuing. Just a quick reminder, CubeCon, like if you're still here and you are invested enough to get to the end of us talking about black 3-drops for 2 hours, like
get us to CubeCon.
Do us a favor. Like, you clearly like our content enough to keep listening to us. Like, give us a reason to go to CubeCon and check out the link below, and where you can find the Jank Diver Gaming Peasant Cube or the Danelius's All-Star Cube. Hopefully either voted in or in sudden death. And you just give us a vote. And the votes, the votes were like on a very tiny. It must have been on a very tiny margin because there were only, sub 200 votes total for like our block. So
every vote matters. Yep. In this case, every vote matters. Also, if you're coming to CubeCon, let us know because we will probably be there.
Yeah, very, very excited to meet people if that ends up happening. You can check out the Discord down below. You can subscribe to this channel for more content like this. And to all the listeners, thanks for hanging out. Teld and Danelius, thanks for chatting 2 hours about some black 3s. I think this one actually went longer than when we originally did it, but
2 hours
that's
and
cool.
10 minutes is what I got.
Nice.
Yep. We can. There was probably a lot more conversation up towards the first couple cards than the last few cards, but thanks everybody for listening. We'll catch y'all next time.
See ya.